Join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
London's burning, a major incident declared yesterday as temperatures in the city make history.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 20th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
The Met Office's chief scientist said he wasn't expecting to see in his career temperatures reach 40.3 degrees for the first time ever.
Here's how it's shaping up across the country. London Fire Brigade declared a major incident in Wennington in East London where terrified residents fled from the inferno.
In Dartford, these pictures from there, firefighters tackled a huge blaze into the evening. Drivers, indeed, on the A2 were impeded because they were warned that smoke billowing from that fire would impact their visibility.
Another major incident was declared in Maltby in South Yorkshire, where a fire that started in scrubland spread and destroyed people's homes.
If you have had an experience of all of this, please do join in our discussions. How scary must that have been?
Yeah, I mean, the weather yesterday was scary just in itself. Really,
well, it's not even, do you know what? It's not even the weather we're talking about. It's the consequences of the weather, which is what you looked at there. You know what to do. Get in touch. Join the discussion. Yeah,
GB News at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GB News.
Here, let's go to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins. More on the hottest day of the year.
Sweating, swimming, sunbathing, Britain baked. 38.7 degrees Celsius in Cambridge in 2019 was the UK's previous hottest recorded temperature. But just before 11 a.m. yesterday, the record started to tumble. Here in Charlwood in Surrey, first of all, the strong sunshine and Saharan air driving temperatures up to 39.1 degrees Celsius.
It's been busy, it's made it busier. We've got lots of outside gardening, seating, inside all the doors and windows are open, as you can see. It's making it quite a nice cool breeze. People are coming in, having nice cold drinks, ice cream and cold drinks for the builders next door.
But Charlwood was only briefly the hottest place in the UK. An hour later, they recorded 40.2 degrees Celsius here at Heathrow, and then a few hours after that, 40.3 degrees Celsius at Coningsby in Lincolnshire, officially the UK's highest ever recorded temperature. Now, that is a whopping 1.6 degrees higher than the 2019 record. In fact, they recorded record-breaking temperatures at 29 sites across England. That is unprecedented in terms of the geographical extent of those record-breaking temperatures and the margin. Scotland also saw its hottest day, 34.8 degrees, recorded at the Borders. This was Burnt Island in Fife. But as Britain baked, parts of Greater London were burning. A major incident declared by the London Fire Brigade, the biggest of which was at Wennington, a village near the border with Essex. A number of homes set ablaze. Not far away in Clacton-on-Sea, 5 people were pulled from the water, but one was still believed to be missing on Tuesday night. In Richmond, in West London, the body of a 14-year-old boy was pulled from the River Thames. This is something we'll have to get used to. The vast majority of scientists saying we're causing what's happening, and it's going to get more frequent in future. Temperatures are expected to drop to the mid-20s today. In fact, the Met Office has an amber warning in place for thunderstorms in southern England. The storm after the calm. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
So yesterday, Britain was burning, quite literally, as you can see from these pictures, and really, really scary if you were involved in it. Going to say to you, we will be live from Wennington, which you're seeing there. The scene of one of the fires. We're going to be there in the next hour, and we're going to be speaking to the Assistant Commissioner of the London Fire Brigade.
Yeah, and what you're looking at there is Wennington in East London, right on the border with Essex, and you can see a series of houses there just weren't able to be saved after the fire spread from nearby Scrubland, and it's just being, reacting to the fact that the conditions are so dry at the moment that you get the slightest little ignition and it leads to these sorts of things. Hundreds of people had to be evacuated from their homes there yesterday. The church was under threat as well. Lots of people being badly affected, people being treated for smoke inhalation.
But the thing is, Isabel, we would be used to, if these pictures are coming in from Australia,
or south of France.
So south of France, you think, yeah, and these are very much in rural districts or in the middle of forests. I mean, we've seen it on the west coast of America as well, homes that are within forest land. But basically, you're looking at ordinary terraced houses there and the impact of the brush fires impacting. And, people can talk about whether climate change exists or not, but the highest temperatures yesterday led to those scrub fires and then led to the consequences.
Well, a historic day in terms of temperatures. These are the pictures from Dartford yesterday, and you can see the road in the foreground. Look at that smoke billowing into the sky. And
imagine driving through that.
On the roads. Incredibly dangerous situation. All contributing to that decision from the Mayor of London to declare a major incident in the capital.
How frightened would you be in your car if that was around you, just not knowing? Because, you're basically sitting on a petrol tank.
Well, exactly, yeah. Really difficult to know what to do in that situation. And
that's the first time we've seen scenes like that in this country.
Absolutely. And, to hear from the Chief Meteorologist at the Met Office saying he never thought he would see temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius in his career. That happened yesterday. Major incidents declared at 10 fire services across Britain. And really a moment, I think, also to shout out and respect those firefighters in those temperatures, 40-degree heat,
in full uniform,
wearing their full protective gear, and always going towards danger in those situations. Unbelievable. As you say, that looks like a picture from Australia.
It does, doesn't it?
Humble Southeast Asia.
And the irony of all of this, whether it is weather, whether it is climate change, is that today there's going to be a lot of rain around the country. I mean, indeed, while I was looking at that on news programmes yesterday, I was in the middle of a rainstorm. I mean, it was pouring down at 5 o'clock where I was in Surrey.
Yeah, look at you, it wasn't where I was.
Well, really pouring, you know.
Well, there are some fears that there could be flooding today because, of course, the ground is so parched and hard, exactly, that there'll be lots of surface runoff. So, look, if you've had rain, if you've been experiencing terrible fires overnight. I mean, I woke up yesterday to the smell of smoke and I searched my whole house thinking that there had been a fire in the house, and it turns out there'd been a joyrider who'd driven off the road in a nearby common, and that had caught fire and set fire to a huge tract of land there. So these stories were not isolated yesterday. Let us know your experiences of it. If you've had to be evacuated or if you're concerned about it, get in touch, gbnews@gbnews.uk.
OK, turning to politics now. Candidates vying to become Prime Minister will be whittled down to the final 2 today in the next phase of that Conservative leadership contest. Yeah,
things really hotting up here as well. Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss all remain, with Truss gaining a last-minute boost, putting her head-to-head with Mordaunt.
Well, they'll face one more ballot. That is going to happen today. And then there's going to be 2. And those finalists will face the membership of the Conservative Party in a runoff.
And the winner is expected to be announced on the 5th of September. Well, let's get the views of John Ashmore. He's the editor of CapEx and he joins us in the studio. Very good morning to you. I mean, we're saying that we're going to find out who our next Prime Minister is on the 5th of September. But in many ways, people are suspecting that once we know who the final two are today, we'll really know who our next Prime Minister is. Because if Rishi's in the final two, it's most likely the opposite number is going to be the Prime Minister, isn't it?
Well, all the head-to-heads that we've done of Conservative members do suggest that actually all of the last three candidates, Kemi Badenoch, Penny Mordaunt, and Liz Truss would have beaten Rishi Sunak in a head-to-head. So there are some suggestions that some of Sunak's supporters deliberately tried to knock out Kemi Badenoch because she would have done particularly well in that head-to-head. But I would just stress, we've got a long time to go still, a lot of hustings. MPs, as well as being able to vote on the candidates, will have words with their own local associations and their activists about who they think should be Prime Minister. More debates as well, hustings. So I think I'd hesitate to try and call the race too early. I think these things can change. Remember in 2005, we had David Cameron and David Davis went head-to-head, and most people thought David Davis would win. And David Cameron produced this amazing conference speech. Now, obviously, we don't have that, but it just shows how quickly things can change.
Yes. But Rishi Sunak will have a lot of loving up to do to that membership. I mean, he's cruising for a bruising on the current stats.
Yeah, I mean, all the head-to-heads, some really big gaps. I've seen, head-to-heads with Penny Mordaunt where she's sort of 20 points ahead of him. So
why do they like Penny Mordaunt so much? Why do the true blues seem to like her?
I think it's partly because she just gives she has a kind of prime ministerial air to her. She looks the part.
Does she?
People always say this. They say she looks the part. She hasn't actually got that much ministerial experience.
That's not her, of course. That's not who we're talking about.
Yeah, that's Penny Mordaunt.
Penny Mordaunt. No, I thought we were talking about Liz Truss.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so it's Liz Truss we're talking about. Sorry. Go on.
Liz Truss, I think... the reason she's popular among activists is that she's seen as more of a kind of traditional economic conservative. I think that might... Some of Rishi Sunak's supporters might say that's a little bit unfair in him, that he is, by instinct, a bit more inclined to that, but circumstances have meant that he's had to be the kind of chancellor he's been.
So let's get this straight. Are you saying that Penny Mordaunt looks prime ministerial?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's what people say.
That's what they
say. People say that she, looks the part.
She certainly commands a hair, rather well, more so than Liz Truss. She does have lovely hair. Perhaps it's a girl thing. It's very thick.
Yeah, I don't. But to pick my prime minister's based on their hair.
No, I know. Well, absolutely ridiculous. It's just an aside, I think.
Yeah.
But interesting what's going on behind the scenes. Lots of suggestions there could be some dirty tricks, which you were alluding to, that perhaps some of Rishi Sunak's team, these are allegations and they've denied them, could be encouraging parliamentarians to be voting for Liz Truss because they think he would do better in a head-to-head with her with the membership. His team have come out and said, we're not encouraging anyone to do that. But of course, if MPs want to act on their own instincts, that's absolutely fine.
Well, the thing about all that kind of low skullduggery is, of course, they'll say that they're whiter and white, and they would never encourage their supporters to lend votes or anything like that. I mean, we had the same thing last time when it was Boris. There were suggestions that Boris's supporters had deliberately tried to engineer it so it was a race against Jeremy Hunt, who he beat, 66-33, so very, very handsomely. Because it's a secret ballot, it's very difficult to tell who's moved where. I think some people were quite surprised that Liz Truss picked up 15 votes after Tom Tugendhat dropped out, because he's not seen as someone on the same wing of the party as her. But then again, you don't know that those are all direct transfers from his votes or not. So it's quite difficult to pass what's really going on here.
What is really going on? OK, that's John Ashmore. He's the editor of CapEx. And John's going to stay with us as we now go to Barlaston in Staffordshire. And we're going to speak to one of our viewers and listeners, and that's Jane Knight. Jane, a very good morning to you, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Jane.
Thank you, Eamonn. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Well, Jane, the first thing we want to know is you've heard John's political take on things there. What you're seeing now, and we're down to the final three, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss. Where's your instincts going on this?
Well, I'm a floating voter, so I am looking as a member of the general public. And of the last three, I have to say that I'm less than inspired. I was rooting for Kemi Badenoch. But of the three, with Rishi, it's been clear for a while that he was going to be one of the last two. And what bothers me is that he talks as if he's had nothing to do with the cost of living crisis, and yet he's been a significant part of it over the last few years. So if he's talking about tackling it now, what was he doing then? And I've not heard much about cuts and saving on the waste. So that's my concern about Rishi. With Penny Mordaunt, she seems very personable and approachable, and I think that the general public would like her. But I am concerned that people like Lord Frost, who I've got a lot of time for, are talking about her not having an eye for detail, not being on top of the brief. And then Anne-Marie Trevelyan was saying about her missing in action. So that bothers me, because I do think that we need somebody who's conscientious and a hard worker and does want to do the best for the country, which leads me on to Liz Truss, who I do think is hardworking. My concern with her is that she's rather wooden, as people say. I think she would give it her best, and she obviously is very capable. But I really think that she needs to be channeling her inner Kemi rather than her inner Maggie, and loosen up a bit and show us the real person.
I love the analogy there. I mean, that's very well put, very well put.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think, though, when people criticise Boris Johnson, a lot of people criticise the fact that he was, bombastic, all personality, loved to sort of smile and giggle.
No eye for detail.
But he didn't have an eye for detail, and perhaps you could accuse him of some of those things. Would, therefore, somebody like Liz Truss, who you say perhaps lacks presence and personality, but has that eye for detail, be the antidote, be the thing that we're all craving and wanting and needing?
Possibly, but I don't think that you need to have the eye for detail as the Prime Minister necessarily, but have a really good instinct. I think the problem with Boris was he had all the charisma, but his commitment was to himself first and foremost rather than the country. That's my view anyway. And so if Liz Truss, I think she genuinely is patriotic, has thrown her into doing the best and getting Brexit done. But we're a long way from it being done. There's too many rules and regulations still. So I think it's all about having an instinct for a really good team around you. And Boris had that with the Mayor of London role. He appeared to have a really good team around him, but it's gone very awry now in the government, and it's very chaotic, and his nature of being part of this chaos seems to be coming to the fore, and that's what the legacy is that we're left with, Boris.
Jane, now I want to talk about you, and incidentally, being surrounded by a good team, I firmly believe in that. That's why you're here. That's.
You've got the instinct.
I've got the instinct.
I'll do the details.
I got the instinct. Jane, tell us a bit about you. Now, there you are in Barlaston in Staffordshire. Unfortunately, I've never been to Barlaston. Is that a village? Is that a town? Is that a parish? Is it nice to be there? And what did you do? What do you do? What did you used to do? Tell us about yourself, because you're really smart on the politics.
Oh, well, I would say that I'm political, but not party political.
Yes,
Barlaston is a mixed village, and I'm actually on the old Wedgwood estate. So that was a pioneering British inventor, and next door to the Wedgwood Museum. So I'm very keen on local enterprise. My background was in people development, so teaching, coaching, training, mentoring, and I've headed up national training teams, things like that. And I'm semi-retired now. I have a number of projects on the go, and I'm trustee of 2 charities, one of which is called Inspire You, which is based in Wolverhampton. And that is to support young people with the skills that they need for the modern world. So that's
Well, our respect to you. Very, very impressive CV there. And, you know, you're obviously a very, very capable person, but you're also a woman. And often I see newspapers and media directing towards women, and they have this term, dishy rishi, right? So as a woman, do you find rishi dishy, does that come into it at all?
Not at all for me. And one thing that drives me mad is they've talked about Kemi lacking experience. Well, she's actually a few years older in years than Rishi. And if you look at her background and being brought up in Nigeria from the age of 4, you could argue that actually she's got lots more varied life experience than Rishi has. And I mean, let's be honest, he married well. And full credit to him. And I really have no objection to him being very rich. But I do think there was a comment that Kemi made that she wasn't given a cabinet role, and that's why she hadn't been in cabinet. And I think that's true. I think women are overlooked sometimes. So for me, it's about equality, and it's about giving women opportunity. And the way that Kemi has shown herself to be very capable, I would love to see her in a really meaty role like Home Secretary.
She did have a meaty role. She was the Defence Secretary for a while.
No, Kemi Badenoch.
Oh, she's talking about Penny.
Kemi
because I was comparing.
Sorry.
On the age and the experience. So sorry, Eamonn, I was harking back to Kemi.
No, I'm a bit corned beef. Forgive me. I didn't really get the difference between a Penny and a Kemi there. But look, Jane, we're absolute privilege talking to you, absolute super listening to you. We could go on all day, but our producer says this show does not belong to this woman. It belongs to lots of people, but I think you will, in your semi-retirement, get your own radio or television show somewhere or other.
Back, Jane, that is for sure. Thank
Please
you
come
so
back.
much.
Please be a friend of the programme.
I'm open to offer.
Well, we'll see you again then, by the sounds of things. A quick final thought to John Ashmore before
Thanks,
we move
Jane.
on.
Bye.
Jane. John, I just want to talk about Kemi Badenoch and the fact that she is refusing to lend her support to any of the 3 remaining candidates, and the same with Michael Gove, who, of course, was her big backer. What does that say? Why is she doing that, do you think?
Well, she's refusing publicly, isn't she? But this thing about politics being politics and none of them up to dirty tricks, they're all at it.
Follow your heart.
They're all at it.
I just probably imagine she thinks she doesn't want to put all her eggs in one basket.
She wants a cabinet position in whichever one it is. There you go.
I agree with Jane, whose analysis is very good, I think.
Yeah.
I hope that she will get a cabinet role after this. I think she's led a really good campaign. She's come from kind of nowhere, really. I don't think the public knew who she was particularly before this, and made a really big impression. I think she's someone with a good backstory and someone with
future
also
Home
a rare
Secretary,
STEM
maybe.
graduate. She has a degree in systems engineering, which is a rarity in our political kind of classes. There are lots of lawyers and PPE people and not many scientists.
Mrs T, of course, she had
she's the last one, the last PM with a science degree.
Yes. Thanks very, very much. Really good hearing from you. Thank you, John Ashmore there, for that political analysis, and thank you very much to Jane Knight from Barlaston in
Remember when everyone used to
Staffordshire.
say, I agree with Nick? There were those leadership contests,
Yes.
and everyone is going to say this morning, I agree with Jane. I agree with Jane.
Yeah, Jane was very good. But I couldn't tell my pennies from my
I know, the penny didn't drop there.
Penny didn't drop. It didn't drop.
It wasn't Penny that was in Nigeria till she was 4.
Anyway, look at that. Time flies. Coming up to 22 minutes past 6 o'clock.
Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines this hour. And Priti Patel has paid tribute to fire services after blazes broke out across the UK yesterday amid record-breaking temperatures. In a statement, the Home Secretary also urged the public to follow all safety advice from their local emergency services and to try and stay safe.
government has announced that courts will be given new powers to stop Russian oligarchs from abusing the UK legal system. A series of measures will allow courts to throw out meritless claims quicker and cap costs to prevent the super rich from bullying journalists with the threat of expensive litigation.
New analysis shows the NHS could face a shortfall of almost 40,000 nurses by 2024, despite the number of nurses actually increasing. This defies the expectation that the government could meet its own target of recruiting an additional 50,000 nurses in the next 2 years.
We'll hit the break. We'll go to the break with the time at 6:22, and then coming up, we're on the River Thames.
Yeah, we are counting swans. It's part of the Queen's annual swan census.
Yeah.
We'll find out more about that in a bit.
Counting swans. Isn't there a group called Counting Crows?
Oh, yeah.
See, no one cares about the crows. But the
plenty
Queen.
of them.
Do you know who owns all the swans? I don't know if it's in the realm or in the UK or in England only or whatever, but the Queen. The Queen is the Queen of Swans.
Yeah, but you know, swans are quite vicious. So
They
she can have
are.
them.
They are. She actually has the title. She's the Signor of Swans, whatever Signor means.
You just have the most.
No, but it's true.
Do you know she pub quizzes ever?
No, do you know she owns all the seabed around the UK?
Yeah, that does ring a bell.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, if you plant a wind farm off the coast of Blackpool or whatever, Queenie gets the money.
Perfect. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Like being the monarch.
They are. Very good.
Look, we're going to take a break, but first of all, here's your all-important weather forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. Following yesterday's remarkable heat, well, it's much fresher for all of us today. There'll still be some sunny spells out there. It'll still be fairly warm, but there'll also be a few showers and thunderstorms to look out for. We've seen cold fronts move in during the last 24 hours. They've displaced the heat to the east. Still some hot weather in the east of England, but not on the scale that we saw yesterday. Early rain clearing the east of England, and then showers developing across Wales, the southwest, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will be on the cloudy side. But by the afternoon, as temperatures rise further, well, there is the risk of some slow-moving downpours or even some thunderstorms across parts of central and southern England into East Anglia and the southeast. And it's in East Anglia and the east of England where we're likely to see the highest temperatures, 29 or 30 Celsius, a more manageable 21 for Glasgow and Belfast, and low to mid-20s for much of Wales. So any showers or thunderstorms could be problematic for a time during the afternoon, early evening period, particularly on the roads, but they do ease away overnight. And then, well, for most, it's a dry night, clear spells in the west, a bit more cloud there in the east. Look at the temperatures, 15 to 16 Celsius in the south, 12 or 13 for Belfast and Glasgow. And so certainly much fresher overnight, more comfortable for sleeping for most of us, I think. And then we start off with a lot of cloud across the Midlands into eastern and northern England. Scotland also seeing some cloud and some showers in the far north. Northern Ireland, sunny spells, but the best of the sunshine on Thursday will be across Wales and the southwest. 22 to 24 Celsius in the southwest, 26 for London, 20 for Glasgow and 17 for Belfast. So for most, those temperatures much closer to average and feeling pleasant enough where we do get some sunshine. Mostly dry for many on Thursday, some showers around on Friday and Saturday, and again, low to mid-20s widely.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. The time is 6:28. Still to come on our programme this morning, he's putting his body to the ultimate
This
test.
is amazing.
Attempting 22 Olympic triathlons in how many days?
7.
I mean,
7.
ridiculous.
Triathlon. And as you know, Isabel, a triathlon consists of...
3 elements. Luckily.
What do they do? Do they do a marathon?
Swim, run, cycle.
Cycle. Yeah. Well
Pressure
done.
then.
2 points. 2
That's
points.
6:45, and we're also going to be catching up with local hero Mark Jones, who is paying tribute to his brother. He lost him to knife crime, so he's doing these triathlons in honour of him.
OK. The latest inflation numbers will be due just after 7 o'clock. Stay posted with us for those. We got an economist giving her analysis on this, and you can join in any of the discussions like our viewer Jane Knight did and was on the programme there about 10 minutes ago. You know what to do. There's the addresses on the screen.
Yeah, I just want to read this one out quickly before we move on. This is from Pat Hewitt. She said, "Where did the name Dishy Rishi come from? We call him Fishy Rishi." Sorry, that's a bit mean, but I just found that funny. Keep all your thoughts coming in to amaze and amuse us.
There's some people that are fishy.
There are some people. I don't think Rishi's fishy.
No, but I mean,
I don't think he's dishy either.
So, do you know there is a condition where you can smell of a fish?
Oh, no.
There is. There is actually a condition where your underarm sweat and things.
Is that because you eat a lot of fish?
No, I don't know why it is, but if you look it up.
How did you find this out?
Because I'm telling you, this is true. There are people who you can walk close to.
Is that you?
No, it's not me. Oh, no. But you can. I think I interviewed somebody who smelt of a fish one time. But no, it's true. No, I mean they came in to talk about I smell like a fish. Yeah, they didn't. It wasn't that, you sit with someone, you say they smell like a fish.
Yeah.
This person was openly admitting that they smell like a fish.
I mean,
so it's called fish syndrome or something.
If you're a fishmonger or a fisherman,
Oh, no, get that.
you go home at the end of the day and you can wash and wash and wash and wash and wash.
You can't get rid of it.
smell.
And then there's just people who are unhygienic as well.
Yeah.
But then there are people who just naturally smell
So
like a
yesterday
fish.
you're like, there's lots of thick people. Today there's lots of smelly people.
But there are thick people. There are. And do you know what? You must have gone to school with somebody who was smelly.
Yeah, she smelled of cabbage.
Yeah.
I always remember her.
Funny, the guy I went, he smelled of more than cabbage. But of course, it wasn't cabbage she was smelling of. It was just something that smelled like cabbage.
Body odour. Yeah.
No, I
don't want to go there.
I don't think it'll be.
right.
The annual counting of the swan population is underway on the River Thames.
Yeah, very civilised that is. It's also known as swan upping, and it's actually really...
Sorry?
Swan upping. Not one upping.
Swan upping.
Swan
Is
upping.
that one word or 2 words?
It's 2 words. Up the swan. Swan upping. Anyway, it dates back to the 12th century.
Sounds like a
apparently.
crime.
Stop interrupting me. And one of the Queen's titles is...
Seigneur of Swans. Now, I don't know. I can't speak foreign languages. You love showing off. How would you pronounce that?
Well, I'd say seigneur, but to me that sounds like a masculine term.
It's a man.
Presumably in the 12th century there was a male monarch.
Sounds
so
like Manuel. Hello, Seigneur. Seigneur Faulty.
Not differently from that.
Seigneur Faulty.
It's like a monseigneur.
Anyway, this is a great story. So basically, that's what the Queen is. She's the Seigneur of Swans, as Cameron Walker now reports.
These long-necked birds were highly valued food in medieval times, often served at banquets and feasts. Today, they're caught for conservation rather than cooking. The yearly swan count is headed by the Queen's swan marker, David Barber.
The Queen has the prerogative to own swans in the United Kingdom wherever she so wishes. That could be anywhere. But she mainly exercises this right on the River Thames, and she shares this right with the vintners and the dyers livery companies who have owned swans since the 15th century.
When the swan uppers find a family, the boats converge on the brood and surround it until the birds can be lifted out of the water. The young cygnets are tagged with unique numbers that show who the swan belongs to. But birds belonging to the queen remain unmarked. Lingering bird flu amongst the broods means this year cygnets are checked on boats rather than the riverbank to avoid contamination. Adult swans are left in the water, waiting to be reunited with their young. Swan upping has changed from a mostly ceremonial event to one of wildlife conservation. And on the hottest day of the year, swan uppers say it's an opportunity to educate people on the importance of a healthy river. Life for swans on the Thames is not easy, according to swan uppers. They often swallow fish hooks or get tangled in fishing lines. In many areas, river plants are scarce and it's often difficult for swans to feed on the riverbank because of concrete and steel embankments.
Pollution is another big problem, but vandalism is the biggest problem we have, where we have shootings of swans, and that's awful.
Swan uppers are using the week to encourage local school children to think about how they can help the well-being of the river. The Swan Marker's iconic 5-day journey has been an annual ceremony for hundreds of years, and there's no plans to stop the count anytime soon. Karen Walker, GB News, on the River Thames.
Beautiful.
Look, a little fluffy cygnet.
Should appreciate wildlife they got.
Yeah.
Except Isabel says that swans are nasty, horrible things. But you know what? There's people who bloody attack swans. Aren't there? The bloomin' attack swans. Sorry. But it annoys me when people are horrible to animals. Do people take crossbows and things and do all that?
Yeah, but they can be vicious, so...
So why are they vicious? Do you think they're vicious
They're
because...
really territorial. We have a pond near where I live, and
Yes.
if you actually sit on the bench and watch the goings-on of a pond, which you do when you've got small children,
Yes.
it is violent. The swans are attacking the geese are attacking the ducks are attacking the pigeons. It is dog-eat-dog out there in the bird pond.
Are dogs
world.
eating dogs out there? It's like prairies, like hyenas and things. It's like the African prairies.
I mean, it
isn't
is. It's exactly
and this is
that.
this is only where barns.
Yeah, somewhere lovely.
Anyway, the papers with David Miller and Claire Muldoon. We just need your company after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. The time is 6:36. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines.
Large fires have ravaged parts of England after yesterday's record-breaking temperatures. Major incidents were declared by fire brigades in London, Leicestershire, South Yorkshire and Buckinghamshire.
Conservative MPs will vote for the final 2 candidates for the Tory leadership race later today. 3 contenders remain after Kemi Badenoch was voted out yesterday evening. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak secured the most votes, whilst the Trade Minister, Penny Mordaunt, and the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, came second and third.
Researchers say there's no clear evidence that depression is caused by low serotonin levels. A new review called into question the widespread use of antidepressants, as it found the condition is not likely caused by chemical imbalance. Now, we're going to be talking about this later in the programme, and it's something that affects so many people. And a lot of the thought was that depression can be due to a chemical imbalance in the brain. 20 past 8, we've got an expert into this research coming on. To the newspapers now, and we go through those with the former Chief Secretary for the Treasury, David Miller, and here in honour of, yes, sorry, my next guest, sorry, yes, I'm sorry, here, what I'm trying to say is, in honour of St Patrick's Day, here in July, we have the broadcaster Claire Muldoon. Very nice to see you, and it's not that I'm against that, but...
No, I know, but I think you're going to inflame more than the country with those comments, Eamonn Holmes.
What? Well, it is, well, why? What?
Well, there were some people that weren't very happy with what I had to say last week at last week's paper review.
Well, that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
It's not like you do annoy anybody.
No, I know, it's not.
What? Now, David Mellor, on the other hand... Yeah, David Mellor, on the other hand. Let's go...
annoy everybody, that's why I'm here. I'm on earth. If I can help somebody as I go on my way, you know.
Right.
And I can do that best by annoying them. So I want to annoy them now by saying I am depressed by the Tory leadership battle. Aren't we fed up with it?
Well, you're taking... this is the take from front page of the Times. Trusts closing on Mordaunt.
I mean, what can I say? Liz Truss, it was Dame Edith Evans, I think, who said to a young actress, everything will be fine if you don't bump into the scenery, but she bumps into the scenery the whole time and just doesn't seem to be spontaneous. It's like those old... when they replace those wonderful Disney fantastic cartoons with the computerized version, they were said to be semi-animated, where some bits of them move and other bits didn't. And I feel Liz Truss is of that era. And then you get Penny Mordaunt. I mean, there's a fascinating story in the Times, page... I've got to change my glasses here, if I could only afford to.
13.
Enough here. Page 13.
Gotcha.
You've obviously got great eyes. Fox News pundit has fought digital war for Mordaunt. And this is called astroturfing, where you sort of invent a kind of grassroots movement for some person, even if there isn't one. I know.
And they say politics isn't a dirty business and there's no manoeuvres going on.
Look, I mean no disrespect to these ladies. Honest to God, I don't. But Penny Mordaunt, I mean, I follow politics quite closely. I'm a sad, I need to get a life. 10 years I have noticed Penny Mordaunt for jumping into a swimming pool.
People don't seem to talk about her appearance on that reality show Splash a lot. No, but it's true. I mean, what was going through her head at that stage, to take part in that?
One dreads to think. Answers on a postcard. But look, 85 days, glorious days as Defence Secretary. But, out of this, and only having been in the Cabinet for a limited period, is conjured this amazing thing that the public are clamouring for Mordaunt. I don't believe they are. I think a lot of this is online manipulation. But it gets quite serious if the online manipulation can make you Prime Minister.
Right, but I noticed you mentioned the ladies. What are your views on Rishi Sunak then? I mean, Heseltine's come out saying he would totally agree with his fiscal strategy. Are you, of the three, most in favour of him then?
Please believe, as someone who was cuffed round the ear in my youth by Margaret Thatcher on a regular basis, I do not dare be disrespectful of women in politics. My sadness is that having been our youngest minister for 4 years, yes, I'm that old, though I don't look it. Can I tell you that, she at least knew what she wanted to do. there was no way she bumped into the scenery or needed somebody to sort of tell her where to put herself. Bernard Ingham, her press secretary, wouldn't let her read the papers. He only let her read a digest of the papers because he said it would annoy you and there's no point. So basically, what do I think of Rishi Sunak? I think Rishi Sunak is bright. I think he's probably got better command. This ignorant discussion they're having, and it's all over the papers still, about tax cuts. Where does that all come from? But the problem for Rishi Sunak is the way, talk about media going mad. It appears as though he's been bought and paid for by his father-in-law, and a simple boy from Southampton brought up perfectly properly in humble circumstances now goes round with, can you imagine mug of tea that automatically gets it to your table? I mean, I'm sorry, but this isn't good.
Is that really his problem, or is he seen to have stood against Boris Johnson and be responsible for the dethroning of Boris Johnson? It could be one of these. I want to move on to Claire.
Yeah.
Claire, I just wonder how disturbing. I'm looking at this again. Fox News pundit has fought digital war for Penny Mordaunt. And, we criticise the Russians for interfering digitally, having these bots about all these sort of things. But then maybe maybe they're all at it. Maybe how do we believe anything in the world anymore? So she's either popular or she's not, or she's been artificially inflated, as it were.
Well, that's the problem, I think, with not only the mainstream media, but with news output in general. People must have a massive distrust for what they're actually fed. All these papers, I mean, the climate activists, the anarchists yesterday, combated News UK, broke down windows because they didn't think that Murdoch's press were recording the climate change accurately or vociferously enough. We've now got a leadership contest with the Conservative Party in this country, whereby you've quite rightly said, online manipulation, I would say, of the facts and, of the actual news. So that we're looking at it through a lens, but we don't know if the lens is manufactured or not. We don't know who the great actors are in this, in terms of pulling the strings, making the front runners go. And some would say, actually, that the mainstream media were to blame in part or in whole for Boris's demise. So we get whipped up into this frenzy of right is right, left is woke, what's in between. And now we've got the leadership contest and we seem to see this manipulation in. I mean, I'm going to cover the front page of the Mail in a minute. Truss allies warns no dirty backroom deals. Long gone are the days, I think, when, David, you must have been in Cabinet, where we saw the private secretaries now morph into spin doctors like A.K. Alistair Campbell, Mendelsohn et al. And they were the ones that were pulling the strings with regards to the media output and what our leaders actually believed, and then they started to self-fulfill the prophecy, almost.
In what I sadly think of as the good old days, most of these discussions would be had in-house.
Yeah, and behind closed doors, no?
Would castrate you if you actually...
Reporters on it, in public, yeah.
But that's the sadness of this whole business. A lot of not very gifted people are being promoted beyond their capabilities by a lot of rubbish on social media.
Yeah.
But do you think there are... I mean, Liz Truss allies are warning against Sunak's team in particular, and the suggestion is that his campaign would do better if he was facing off against Liz Truss with the membership rather than Penny Mordaunt. And the suggestion is that some of his supporters actually backed Liz Truss in the last round in the hope that they might get her into the final two.
The tragedy for Sunak is that in trying to be a good Chancellor and balance the books, he's now being accused of being a socialist, where, of course, who was spending the money stepped forward shyly into the limelight, Boris Johnson. And the idea somehow that Boris is blameless in all of this, Boris is responsible for the loss of control of public expenditure. Sunak...
Well, I think that's what Sunak is saying. And I think people are quite naive to think that, he can make all the final decisions.
Yeah, he doesn't. But, I mean, I've been saying that. Because, he's been Chief Secretary of the Treasury, a pretty awful job, but the satisfaction of it was to get people to cut public expenditure, and then you could give them tax cuts. How easy it is to be, but now you don't have to bother with getting them to control expenditure, you just cut taxes. Borrow. I mean, come on, and borrow. Yeah. And I look at my poor little granddaughter, poor little soul, and I think, you're 4, babe, when you're 94, you'll have paid a lot of this off, maybe.
Maybe. OK, Claire, what do you want to talk? Do you want to talk about the situation? We lead this morning with the fact that London was burning, particularly quite shocking pictures, and I know this happened around the country as well, but the fact that we're talking about properties, houses, a very normal, ordinary-looking street, and these houses burning, and it wasn't a scene from Australia or Portugal or west coast of America.
Yeah, so the front page of the Mirror, it looks actually like a supermarket wrap, actually. You know, the ones that you get in most of the papers when they're trying to sell you something. Yeah. But the Mirror today have got 40 degrees, Britain's burning. The stark reality is that this country cannot cope with weather, but predominantly hot weather. And that's scientifically proven because the asphalt in the roads built 20-odd years ago were not tested to the same degree, were not used to the same material high standard that really ought to be used.
Railway tracks, etc.
Yes, etc., etc. So there are reasons. We can't just say, well, we can't cope with that, that's just Britain. There are actually reasons why this is happening, and the manufacturer of the fabric in the country can't cope. But you know, the hottest day in history yesterday is scenes of devastation. You would think, if you look inside Tinderbox Britain, this surely now should be the starting point of conversation of the fact that, yes, we do have climate change. Things are changing. 20 years ago, when it was first reported that we have to gain net zero, we said that we'd had a party in planet Earth, and now was the hangover. And there was a great visual in one of the papers of the recycling boxes filled up with CFCs, plastics, etc., etc. That was 20 years ago. Not much has changed, as we can see.
There's a significant element of exaggeration as one reads a lot of this stuff. I mean, I had the privilege of driving across, or being driven across southern Britain yesterday, starting off in Dorset, where it was very hot, but because it's the country, you don't notice it so much. Going through a lot of urban areas, it wasn't so bad. You got into London and the first pall of smoke began to hang over the place.
Well, that's not exaggeration.
And it's not that good. But is it anything to get hysterical?
Well, do you know what, David? I think there is a huge difference between being in the middle of a city and being out in the countryside. My parents are just down in Surrey, and it's totally different from how it is to be in the capital. I woke to the smell of smoke yesterday in my house. I thought there was a fire in my house.
Your child was setting light to
I went and searched the house and sniffed everything as I was convinced we were on fire. And I said to the taxi driver in the morning, I said, can you smell that? And he said, I'd call the fire brigade if I was you, because it could be one of your neighbours. It later emerged that it was a little bit down the road on a common, but fires were breaking out right across hence why the Mayor of London declared a major incident in the capital.
As did the fire service.
As did the fire service. I don't think it is an exaggeration. I mean, when has anyone experienced 40 degrees in London?
I know, and you're dead right. I just worry, though, whether we just make a fuss. But look,
a street of houses burning down, I'd make a fuss.
I don't think there's a fuss unnecessarily made of this. I agree.
Go to Kuwait quite a lot. Now, what's the temperature in Kuwait?
But David, they're
50 degrees.
It's in the middle of the desert. They're used to it, OK? It's not. You cannot compare Kuwait, Dubai, the rest of the UAE to what's happening in this country right now. And I think that the important thing is it opens up conversation on best practice, on how to build roads, how to put infrastructure in place, and also houses.
What I thought was interesting, apparently they're talking about with HS2, embedding the train tracks in concrete so that they don't buckle.
They don't expand.
We heard yesterday that train tracks can't really operate above 35 degrees Celsius. They were 69 degrees yesterday, hence why nobody could take a train, because, of course, they're metal, so they're all incredibly hot.
It's our train tracks that can't operate. Plenty of other countries.
No, well, we need to change if this is how it's going to be now, for sure.
Meanwhile, David, under the radar, while we're not talking about Ukraine, we're not talking about Russia, we're not talking about Putin, what's he doing in Iran? How come he popped on a plane?
Desperate for a friend, isn't he? A friend in need.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's actually quite. There he is, page 13 of the Telegraph, shaking hands
with an Ayatollah.
With an Ayatollah. I think when desperation hits, you go and find a friendly Ayatollah, or maybe a not very friendly Ayatollah, and shake hands with them. But look, basically,
it's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it? Friendly Ayatollah.
Says the Telegraph. It's common cause in forming an alliance to counter the hegemony of the West. You see, what I find extraordinary, and you have to ask yourself, what's the point of the UN? The UN has Russia as a permanent member, even though Russia is behaving appallingly. As a result of Russia remaining a permanent member of the UN, nothing is being done about this ghastly war where innocent people are being slaughtered And this wretched man is going around the world. I don't know how ill he is. He doesn't look very well. We hope he's not very well. But basically, what on earth are we doing, allowing Russia to get away with this?
I agree with you. I think the UN situation is absolutely farcical. You know, that they remain a member of the Security Council.
What security is there in a world with Putin?
Interestingly, what was Rishi Sunak's response to, I think it was one of the TV debates on Channel 4, when they were all asked, are you willing to sit down with Putin? Liz Truss said she was. What did Rishi say?
No idea.
Or Penny Mordaunt? So perhaps Liz...
You know what? I love these people, but I don't take that much notice.
Yeah.
That's what the TV debate is. So that...
And the other valid reason for being here, but that's the truth.
And we're not getting much detail from them as well. Guys, they're going to tell more truths in about 40 minutes' time. David Mellor and Claire Muldoon, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Indeed. We continue to concentrate on the heatwave.
Yeah, as it subsides today, spare a thought for a man from Croydon. He's been training in an attempt to break the world record for the number of triathlons completed in a week.
Triathlons, we said there, right. Triathlons in a week. His name is Mark Jones, and he's going to, he thinks, complete 22 Olympic triathlons by Sunday. That'll cover over 1,000 kilometres swimming, biking and running.
And he's doing it all for a really valid cause. He's trying to raise money for the knife crime charity Steel Warriors, and this is after his younger brother was actually killed during a knife attack. Our reporter Ellie Costello has the story.
This is Mark Jones. He's set himself the challenge to complete 22 Olympic triathlons in just 7 days. That's a 1,500-metre swim, a 40-kilometre bike ride and a 10k run 22 times. If he does it, he'll break the Guinness World Record.
Triathlon's like a roller coaster ride, you know, that grit and determination just to want to push through anything, what's chucked at you.
This challenge is emotional. Mark is doing it in memory of his younger brother, Stephen, who was killed in a knife attack 15 years ago. Stephen was just 23 years old.
It just never goes away. It's always there. So, you know, nothing's going to bring them back. But hopefully, if you can show people, you know, what you're doing, you come from that sort of disadvantaged background, council, state. They come from disadvantaged backgrounds as well. You can actually do something yourself and turn your life around.
All of you, you got this. Mark isn't doing this alone. He's got the support of his wife, Jane, who is even camping out with him all week.
What was your reaction when he first told you that this was the plan? Yo, what? You know, nothing surprises me with him anymore. He can do anything he sets his mind to. He's the most determined person I've ever met, and this challenge means the world to him. He's got a real emotional attachment to this challenge in particular, which will make him even more determined. So I know he's going to do it, and happy to be with him.
Every penny that Mark raises will go to Steel Warriors.
Also, what's beautiful about what Steel Warriors do is also that they take, you know, what is most violent, the actual physical objects, the knives, and they turn them into these bars. So it's actually like it's a metaphor for what can be done. Like you can take the worst parts of a city and turn it into something that's the most beautiful part of the city. And I think that's just it's quite beautiful.
We receive all the knives that the police take off London streets and from amnesties too, and we melt them down and recycle them into free outdoor gyms, allowing young people to have a positive way of releasing energy and flexing muscles. We've seen lots of young people getting into calisthenics and out of gangs and into different groups and even becoming professional athletes and making money from it too. So the more gyms that we can build, the more difference we can make.
The Guinness World Record is now within touching distance. So how is Mark feeling?
You're probably going to be on your hands and knees or something, you know? So, and, you know, show people that you can break a world record, you know, and they can also do whatever they want to do, or, you know, find something what they're good at and, just, you know, just drop a knife and just, you know, I'm hoping it's going to change and people are going to look at it and think, well, I want to do something inspirational now, be an inspiration to other people and have a knock-on effect.
Ellie Costello, GB News.
Well, you know, it is incredible what Mark is trying to do, but it is totally understandable. And this awful scourge of knife crime and him having lost his brother.
Yeah, I think grief can be a huge motivator in achieving these, absolutely incredible things. If you want to donate to Mark Jones's challenge, head to Steel Warriors website. You can find a link to his Just Giving page there.
Now, on the subject of Just Giving, I was trying to donate something during the week. And every time I went to filling in a form, it wouldn't recognise my first name, Eamonn, right? So it said E.G. Jane. So I put in Jane. I put Michael. I put lots of things. And it kept saying, this name has to be involved in spaces. Right, so I spaced the name out. But anyway, I couldn't give the money because it just wouldn't let me because of my first name. What does it matter what my first name is?
No.
You know, if I can make it up.
Yeah, there's nothing
Who
wrong
could
with
I identify as that particular day? I might have been Emma Holmes that day.
One of your brothers.
One of my brothers.
One of your many brothers.
But it just would not accept any name at all. And I was very, the charity lost.
Yeah,
you know, the contribution lost. And anyway, it was very annoying. So if anybody's in Just Giving or behind that, people say technology's wonderful.
Can be annoying.
When it works. It is annoying.
Yeah.
It is annoying. What's wrong with the days you just used to send checks off to people?
Sometimes it works wonderfully. Anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be live from Wennington. This is where at least 9 homes burnt down yesterday. Hundreds of people were evacuated. And we will get the latest from the London Fire Brigade, who yesterday declared a major incident.
OK, as to the weather today, well, I don't think it could be much different than it was yesterday. Here it comes.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following yesterday's remarkable heat, well, it's much fresher for all of us today. There'll still be some sunny spells out there. It'll still be fairly warm, but there'll also be a few showers and thunderstorms to look out for. We've seen cold fronts move in during the last 24 hours. They've displaced the heat to the east. Still some hot weather in the east of England, but not on the scale that we saw yesterday. Early rain clearing the east of England, and then showers developing across Wales, the southwest, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will be on the cloudy side. But by the afternoon, as temperatures rise further, well, there is the risk of some slow-moving downpours or even some thunderstorms across parts of central and southern England into East Anglia and the southeast. And it's in East Anglia and the east of England where we're likely to see the highest temperatures, 29 or 30 Celsius, a more manageable 21 for Glasgow and Belfast, and low to mid-20s for much of Wales. So any showers or thunderstorms could be problematic for a time during the afternoon, early evening period, particularly on the roads, but they do ease away overnight. And then, well, for most, it's a dry night, clear spells in the west, a bit more cloud there in the east. Look at the temperatures, 15 to 16 Celsius in the south, 12 or 13 for Belfast and Glasgow. And so certainly much fresher overnight, more comfortable for sleeping for most of us, I think. And then we start off with a lot of cloud across the Midlands into eastern and northern England. Scotland also seeing some cloud and some showers in the far north. Northern Ireland, sunny spells, but the rest of the sunshine on Thursday will be across Wales and the southwest. 22 to 24 Celsius in the southwest, 26 for London, 20 for Glasgow and 17 for Belfast. So for most, those temperatures much closer to average and feeling pleasant enough where we do get some sunshine. Mostly dry for many on Thursday, some showers around on Friday and Saturday, and again, low to mid-20s widely.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
London's burning. A major incident is declared in the capital as temperatures in Britain make history.
Folks, a very good morning to you. The time just after 7 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 20th of July. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster. We thank you for your company.
Our top story this morning, the Met Office's chief scientist says he wasn't expecting to see this in his career as temperatures reach 40.3 degrees for the first time ever. Here's how it's looking across the country.
Well, in London, the fire brigade there declared a major incident after pictures I'm sure you will have seen. Wennington, this is in the eastern part of London, the extreme east, just within the M25. If you lived there, you would be absolutely terrified, and householders there fleeing from what turned into an inferno.
Yeah, we'll be live from the scene now in just a moment. In Dartford, meanwhile, firefighters tackled a huge blaze there well into the evening. And as you can see from the smoke, drivers on the A2 warned that visibility was being significantly impacted.
Let's go to Hertfordshire there. Those pictures there, 200 firefighters called to deal with a field fire there, and that's the scorched earth. Result of that, it's spread over 200 acres of farmland.
Another major incident was declared in Maltby in South Yorkshire, where a fire that started in scrubland spread and destroyed people's homes.
Folks, if you want to get involved in any of this, and you know, when you do get involved, often we get back to you, we get you on air. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk. We've already done that. We've been to Staffordshire this morning with one GB News viewer and listener. You can also tweet at GB News.
Right, let's go to Wennington, where that major incident has been declared. Our reporter Alice Porter is out and about for us this morning. And Alice, I understand very difficult actually to get anywhere near the scene, understandably, as hundreds of people have had to be evacuated from that area. But bring us right up to date on what it's like where you are this morning.
Good morning. Well, such was the severity of yesterday's fire that there is a road blockade in place, so you can't get into Wellington. But we've been out this morning getting some drone footage showing the scale of the devastation in Wennington, and it really is quite remarkable. 40 hectares of grassland which has been completely incinerated. I think you can see some of the really dramatic footage there, and rows of terrace houses which have been completely scorched. Multiple cars were set on fire, people's garage. I mean, it's also worth saying with this grassland area that was on fire and completely blackened out, how difficult that it will be for farmers. You know, that's their land, really difficult, and also incredibly hard for families who were evacuated. We understand 90 homes were evacuated, and of course incredibly difficult circumstances. I mean, people having to make sure that their animals were got out safely, and very difficult for the firefighters on the scene. One of them described it as absolute hell. And And I think to show just the strength and the ferocity of the fire is that this went on for such a long time. Calls were made to London Fire Brigade at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't brought under control until just before 10 o'clock last night. So such a huge part of this very small town really has been scorched out, even parts around by the fire station. So an absolutely devastating here that we've seen in Wellington over the last 24 hours.
Okay, Alice, and just give us a sense, if you can, paint a picture of the smell there this morning, of the mood. Have you been speaking to people about how they're feeling about it all?
Well, we're not able to get through, unfortunately, on the road. But I think not just here in Wellington, but so many different areas of London have been affected by these fires over the last 24 hours. I've just been looking on the London Fire Brigade's website, and actually there were 15 different fires recorded in London yesterday. From Dagenham, there were some scenes there, Wembley, Upminster. And what was also so extraordinary, I was keeping an eye on this last night, and up until 10 o'clock last night, there was still new fires that were happening. In Twickenham, there was one at a golf course there. So I think that's one of the things is there's this fire here that was incredibly dramatic that we've seen from the footage there. But this is not just the only fire. There were 15 different recorded fires that took place across the whole of Greater London area. And it's no surprising that a major incident has been occurred.
Okay, Alice, thank you very much. Keep us posted on all developments.
Just so frightening, frightening to see all of that. I mean, literally a little hamlet burning there. And if you're from Wennington and you want to get in touch with us today, we'll put you on air by a phone call or Zoom. Tweet us at GB News, or you can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll get straight back to you. As to the fire brigade, how are they coping with what is going on all around them? Here's Assistant Commissioner Jonathan Smith from the London Fire Brigade on that one. First of all, Jonathan, I'd just like to say respect and admiration to you and your teams.
No, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for that. As your reporter was showing there, the sheer scale and challenge that we've faced over the last sort of 12 hours in particular has been unprecedented in the history of London Fire Brigade. Just to give some additional context, since 8 o'clock yesterday morning, we've received 2,670 calls and attended well over 1,000 incidents, the vast majority of which were related to the heat wave that we've been experiencing. Again, as your colleague from Wennington was reporting, the fire in Wennington was not the only significant incident that we attended yesterday. We had 15 other serious and significant incidents spread right across the capital. That's on top of the usual day-to-day emergencies that we would normally respond to. And there was also a number of lower level types of incidents, mainly related to grassland fires and woodland fires, that had just resulted in the tinderbox dry conditions that existed yesterday. And our firefighters were operating in temperatures of 40 degrees, which is something we've not experienced before. And I would like to actually just put on record my immense thanks to firefighters, officers and control staff who coped and managed admirably yesterday in what was extremely challenging conditions. We had 16 firefighters who were suffering from heat-related injuries, 2 of whom were hospitalised, but I'm pleased to say have now been released from hospital. So that gives you a sense of the challenge that we faced yesterday, and hence the reason we declared a major incident.
Look, listening to you, and I mean, it must have been just getting calls all the time as to there's an incident here, there's an incident there, there's an outbreak here, there. I mean, obviously you couldn't tend to them all and you have to prioritise, but it must have been, as you say, absolutely unprecedented, this sort of thing. But Jonathan, let me say this to you, no 2 days are the same. We're talking about rainstorms now, we're talking about maybe the risk of flooding, and a lot of people may not realise it, but the fire brigade often called for those as well.
No, you're absolutely right. So these challenges that we now face that are related to climate change really are at both ends of the extreme. So as we saw yesterday, we were dealing with heat-related issues and the fact that the ground was extremely dry and all the challenges that brings. But if I take you back to last July, when we were actually dealing with wide area flooding and significant parts of London were flooded throughout July last year. So part of our strategic planning, really, for both now and in the future, is to make sure that the brigade is equipped, trained and ready to deal with these types of incidents, which sadly we know we are going to continue to face in the years ahead. It's a challenge for all of the emergency services at the moment to make sure that actually we've got the right skills, we've got the right training, we've got the right equipment, and we're embedding all of that into our strategic and long-term planning, because the threat from climate change, both in terms of extremes of heat, extremes of cold, and then of course when we get flash flooding, is something that we have to respond to.
Well, look, we hear what you're saying there. Times are a-changing. Meanwhile, budgets and whatever tend to stay the same. We had the public sector settlement announced yesterday. Firefighters would have been included in all of that. There's going to have to be a major rethink from politicians, isn't there, as to, you know, if you want safety, if you want the correct facilities, if you want a properly manned and equipped fire service, you're going to have to give us the money.
Well, we would always want more additional resources, but we also have to think smartly as an organisation as well to make sure that we're prioritising our budgets that properly matches the risk that we know that we face. We have a responsibility as a public sector organisation to spend the public's money wisely. That needs to be firmly rooted in the risks and challenges that we face. So I think it's a combination of both. Of course, we would always look for additional resourcing to make sure that we've got everything that we need. But we also need to have a look at ourselves as an organisation to make sure that we're prioritising our spend and that we're making sure that all of our strategic plans are matched to the evolving risk picture, actually, that we're seeing develop over, both now and in the future. So it's a combination of a number of things, making sure that, yes, we've got the overarching budget and resourcing that we require, sure that our internal strategy, including where we actually prioritise our spending, is matched against the risks that we face.
Jonathan, as you say, unprecedented day yesterday, or 12 hours, the last 12 hours in the history of the London Fire Brigade. I mean, unbelievable to hear you say those words. People watching this will be concerned. Obviously, we're seeing cooler weather conditions today, but are there things that people can do to try and mitigate the risk? And whether that be just an opportunity to remind people not to throw cigarettes out the window, particularly during these hot conditions, or whether it's just a check on your electrical goods. I mean, what could people do to make sure that they aren't one of those people, like those in Wennington, who have suffered in the last 12 hours?
Yeah, so there's some very sensible precautions that we would ask members of the public to adhere to, because although the weather, I'm pleased to say, has started to change today, the ground still remains extremely dry. So there is still the significant risk of grassland fires and wildland fires in particular. So we would absolutely say that people need to think about and moderate their behaviour over the course of the next 12 to 24 hours in particular. That means doing things like not having barbecues in outdoor spaces such as parks and grasslands. As you say, being very careful about how you discard cigarettes and making sure that that's done safely. And it's even not being careless about how you leave rubbish around, particularly things like broken glass, which can magnify the rays from the sun and then actually trigger a spark, which causes a fire. So this is very much an appeal from us, both as London Fire Brigade and the wider emergency services, that people just need to think and moderate their behaviour, particularly when we're dealing with extremes of heat at the moment, because the smallest spark, as you saw yesterday, can cause fires to spread extremely quickly. And I would just add as a point of reassurance, although yesterday was an unprecedented challenge in terms of the history of the London Fire Brigade, we were able to respond. We have well-rehearsed plans in place. Part of the thinking around declaring the major incident was to bring the full force of that pan-London response across all of the emergency services, support from local government and the mayor and partner agencies, to make sure that we did have that partnership approach to bring the
people who, under your service, that have been injured. You were listening and watching Jonathan Smith. Jonathan's the Assistant Commissioner of the London Fire Brigade. Unprecedented.
You stand at its highest rate for over 40 years. They added the increase was driven by rising fuel and food prices.
The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has paid tribute to fire services after those blazes right across the country yesterday, amid record-breaking temperatures. The Home Secretary also urged the public to follow all safety advice from the local emergency services and stay safe.
New analysis shows the NHS could face a shortfall of almost 40,000 nurses by 2024, despite the number of nurses increasing. This defies the expectation that the government could meet its own target of recruiting an additional 50,000 nurses in the next 2 years.
And that is a problem. And this is where politicians talk in double speak. So they will say, we were doing an interview with a politician, a health secretary, whatever the answer would be, but we have recruited 50,000 new nurses. What they don't tell you is they've lost 40,000 as well. And, you know, it just all can't be about figures and statistics. It's got to be about people, caring for people, valuing people, and just absolutely encouraging. I mean, I just believe all this nonsense from people like Tony Blair about education is absolute nonsense. Yes, it's an ideal, but if you can't get a dental nurse, if you can't get a motor mechanic, if you can't get someone to lay your carpet or put wallpaper on your walls, why aren't we just saying these trades are fantastic? People who can do this, I always admire. I mean, I'm useless. I'm useless at everything. Don't contradict me here. But I'm useless at everything.
Very good at news anchoring.
No, but I'm useless.
You can change a light bulb.
But and you know, the thing is, you have to admire and respect people who have got trades and who have got crafts, and you've got to build them up, and you've got to actually respect. When I go into public toilets, this sounds pervy, but I seek out people who clean them. I do.
I know you do.
I was in Athens, and it was the most beautiful toilet, public toilet, right? And it was the most beautiful toilet. And there was a lady sitting there with a mop or whatever at the front. And I thought, she probably didn't understand a word I said. I said, you speak English? And I said, I just want to say to you, this is absolutely brilliant what you've done. Because the point is, people who do jobs that the rest of us can't be bothered with, that we don't want to do, you really got to respect them. And, I mean, I had a hospital stay a month ago. I was in hospital for a week. And that was NHS, and I just looked and respected and admired and thought of these people. I am not worthy to be in their presence.
Look, I 100% agree with you that where would we be in a country without nurses, without firefighters,
police officers,
putting their lives in harm's way. But what you'll never hear me say is that education is a bad thing. I don't think everybody needs tertiary education. But when people are making decisions, when the general public are making decisions about who's going to run our country, the more education, the better. Because
don't agree. I could tell you this. You could come in here and I could have 5 people in front of me and I'd say, that's the person with the personality, the person. I have got people, excuse me, not everybody who's educated is smart, right? In journalism, for instance, I can see people who've got master's degrees in journalism and can't spell.
No, but Eamonn, a lot of the world's problems,
no, Isabel, I'm sorry. No, I'm not denying education. I'm just saying this emphasis on education. I think people, particularly from lower classes, get emancipated through education, and I think that is a fantastic thing. But I don't believe to work in Tesco's, to stack shelves and whatever, you've got to fill in a form.
I don't think you need a degree to stack shelves.
No, but you have to fill in these forms that people are... What you really do need is, instead of whittling people out through... I don't know what these forms are called, but I know a lot of kids talk to me about having to fill in these... No, they're called... there's something about cognitive, whatever. If you were in this situation, what would you do and all this nonsense? You could take a youngster in and you know immediately who's got it and who hasn't. And I know that throughout my whole life because I've rarely have ever been proved wrong when I've said, give that kid a job. You can tell.
But when it comes to things like climate change denying, if people are educated, then you don't have these problems of people saying, well, this isn't happening. Well, actually, the scientists who know it and have based this on evidence and
that's not what I'm talking about.
No, I know.
I'm
just
talking
trying to
about
argue the case for education, that's all. We're on the same page. We're both saying you don't need education for everything, but education...
Obviously, if you're a vet or a dentist or whatever, you need an education.
I think we're agreeing.
What I'm saying, do not do down people who've got common sense. That's what I'm saying.
You'll never hear me do down common sense, and you'll never hear me do down nurses, especially. You'll never hear me doing down people who dig roads, because I wouldn't do it as well. And we just need a broad church of people with skills and people who contribute to society. And this absolute snobbery of business, of actually saying, oh, they don't have a degree, they don't have a degree, and they don't have this, they don't have that.
but they may have a lot of other skills. That is the thing.
Absolutely.
7:21, their end of the sermon.
Stay with us if you want. After the break, we're going to be talking about all the sport. Paul Coyte's here. He's going to have all the details.
Now, there's a man with no
gold medal
education, and
Love
he's
him.
very so smart and lovely. I'm sure he has got it. He knows, I tell you what, he's top dollar when it comes to sport after this.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. Following yesterday's remarkable heat, well, it's much fresher for all of us today. There'll still be some sunny spells out there. It'll still be fairly warm, but there'll also be a few showers and thunderstorms to look out for. We've seen cold fronts move in during the last 24 hours. They've displaced the heat to the east. Still some hot weather in the east of England, but not on the scale that we saw yesterday. Early rain clearing the east of England, and then showers developing across Wales, the southwest, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will be on the cloudy side. But by the afternoon, as temperatures rise further, well, there is the risk of some slow-moving downpours or even some thunderstorms across parts of central and southern England into East Anglia and the southeast. And it's in East Anglia and the east of England where we're likely to see the highest temperatures, 29 or 30 Celsius, a more manageable 21 for Glasgow and Belfast, and low to mid-20s for much of Wales. So any showers or thunderstorms could be problematic for a time during the afternoon, early evening period, particularly on the roads, but they do ease away overnight. And then, well, for most, it's a dry night, clear spells in the west, a bit more cloud there in the east. Look at the temperatures, 15 to 16 Celsius in the south, 12 or 13 for Belfast and Glasgow. And so certainly much fresher overnight, more comfortable for sleeping for most of us, I think. And then we start off with a lot of cloud across the Midlands into eastern and northern England. Scotland also seeing some cloud and some showers in the far north. Northern Ireland, sunny spells, but the best of the sunshine on Thursday will be across Wales and the southwest. 22 to 24 Celsius in the southwest, 26 for London, 20 for Glasgow and 17 for Belfast. So for most, those temperatures much closer to average and feeling pleasant enough where we do get some sunshine. Mostly dry for many on Thursday, some showers around on Friday and Saturday, and again, low to mid-20s widely.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
We didn't row all through the break, most of it, but not all the way through.
Not talking to you.
The whole of the inbox is agreeing with you. Anyway.
But Isabel, can I tell you, I am so in favour of people. I'm so in favour of seeing through the rubbish and just valuing people. And I think too many employers don't value people.
Start this again. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm with you.
All
I'm
right.
with you. Right, it's 7:26. Still to come on the programme this morning. A new study out today says there's no clear evidence that depression's caused by low serotonin levels.
See,
which has been used for years as the diagnosis.
This is a serious thing. I mean, there's not enough aftercare for people who, and therapy for people who do suffer from depression. So are they saying that all the theories we thought about what leads to depression are wrong? Well,
what does this mean for antidepressant medication? If people have been taking that medication, which has presumably contained serotonin, and that's worked, why has that worked? We'll get all of the answers for you from somebody who did the research, the professor involved in that. That's going to happen right here in the studio at 20 past
And
8.
you know, I am blessed that I've never had to take antidepressants in my life, and I don't really suffer from anything like that. However, I know people who have, I know people who've taken their own lives, and I'd just like to say to any of you who are out there and feeling really bad and feeling really low, and maybe these tablets help, maybe they don't help. I think we're all going to be agreed there's not enough aftercare, there's not enough therapy with this. Get in touch with us today, tell us your story. And so we're talking about the data on depression. So there it is, gbviews@gbnews.uk if you want to email. If you want to tweet us, it's at gbnews as well. We are here as the People's Channel.
Yeah, so that's at 20 past 8. Also coming up, as we've been hearing in the last 20 minutes, the rate of inflation has hit a fresh 40-year high of 9.4%. We're going to get full analysis of this from my economics commentator, Laurie Laird, and what this means for the pound in your pocket.
Full analysis now of what's happening sports-wise. Let's go to the back pages and look at those. We begin with the Guardian, and this is about the Live tournament, right? It's the growing split in professional golf following the Ryder Cup captain Henrik Stenson's defection to that Live series. Here's the Mirror, and this one's bang out of order. I mean, you talk about mental health. It leads on the boos received by Manchester United's captain Harry Maguire. This is during their pre-season friendly tour in Australia. I mean, there's a clue in the title. It's a friendly. This man does not need this. Imagine being judged on every performance that you do. We all have off days, but get off Harry Maguire's back. That's what I would say to a lot of people, whether your views are whether he should stay or go, whether he should be captain or not. I think enough is enough there. And finally, when we talk about mental health, Ben Stokes, and of course he's stepping away from his international cricket situations, but his final one-day international ended in yet another England defeat. I'd like to see that headline, Harry beats the boos, there on the back of that newspaper as well. Paul Coit now with his take on all of those things. Paul, good morning to you.
Morning. There's actually a man from Paddington Station with a toilet brush in his hand asking for you as I came in.
Yes.
I
know them all.
I know. He was asking for you by name and everything.
Did you?
Does a lovely job.
It does a lovely job. Would you do that job?
You know what? I'm the same as you. I talk to have a little chat as well, yeah.
And he's also the same as me because he's the only other person I've ever met.
No.
That has been... Well, we'll not say that, no?
Go on, do it.
Will
we? I think we should. Might as well be proud about it.
We're genius in every other thing we do.
Yeah.
Both Paul and I not only failed our CS, but we were ungraded in the process, which is practically impossible to do, right? So that means you've got to get under like 10 marks or so, and we achieved that.
Yeah,
So
congratulations.
well done, partner. Absolutely well done.
Maths geniuses.
Right, so World Athletics, good news there.
World Athletics is it's great, and it's on late. It's on in the States at the moment. Jake Whiteman. Now, 1,500 metres. You'll remember the golden days of when we had middle distance runners, when we had Steve Cram, and we
Bedford.
had but Cohen Ovitt when they were battling against winning world records, winning gold medals. And Peter Elliott was another one. We haven't had a runner like that in middle distance for a long time.
Do you know I was a middle distance runner?
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, I think it wore my hips out eventually, but I was, and I tell you what it taught me. We used to have our coaches on the side of the track, and they would say, "All the way, Holmes, all the way."
Yeah.
And you had to learn breathing, and you had to learn stamina.
Sure.
But off the track, I think that gave me stamina in life, like in terms of a work ethic and thinking, this is tough, but actually I can get through this. And used to think that all the time. There's nothing as bad as running and getting a stitch.
Oh. Run through the stitch.
You have to run through the stitch.
But the thing is, though, after your maths thing, I was just worried whether you're a 100-metre runner. You ended up doing 1,500.
Do you know what? That's probably where
That's
it went
probably
wrong.
what it was.
That's exactly.
We had Holmes as a 100-metre runner, but he's doing 1,500. We can't understand. Is it his maths? But seriously...
Jake Whiteman, 1,500 and a goal.
He is a lovely fella, and I know Jake Whiteman, and he came around 8th in the Olympics last year, and he won bronze in the Commonwealth Games. This is back in 2018. So gold is a new thing for him. He was running against Jakob Ingebrigtsen. Now, that's Jakob. You could just see Jakob there behind him. Well, Jakob Ingebrigtsen is a superstar in Norway. They have a reality show about him and these brothers called the Ingebrigtsens.
The Ingebrigtsens.
The Ingebrigtsens are unbelievable runners.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm kicking the Kardashians into touch.
Kardashians out, Ingebrigtsens are in.
Ingebrigtsen's in.
But although Ingebrigtsen was out because he ended up silver, and Jake Whiteman, you'd think he came in 200 metres to go, and you know what these great races are like, and you think, are they going to kick now? Is it going to happen?
Yeah.
And he went early, and I'm thinking, no, he's gone too early. Ingebrigtsen's going to go past him. And Jake Whiteman just kept going on, and it was a brilliant run. So gold medal, and it was magnificent.
One of the great things about the women's Euros in football is that we get to know the ladies playing. We get to know the personalities involved now. Absolutely brilliant for the sport. Quarter-final time for the Lionesses.
Huge game. And they're unbeaten. They've scored 11. They've let no goals in. They're playing Spain, who are one of the early tournament favourites. I think there's only one place between the two of them, Eamonn, when it comes to the world rankings. So it's going to be a heck of a game tonight.
Yeah, but England are the ones to beat, really.
Well, I think so too, but I never want to say that because you know what it's like with sport. 93 goals in 16 games. It's Serena Wiegmann now. She's the England coach from Holland. She's already has a Euros under her belt when she coached the Netherlands to that. But also, she's had COVID as well. So we're kind of hoping that she's going to be there on the sidelines. There's going to be a late fitness test is going to be a late COVID test as far as she's concerned. But it's a huge game tonight. It's at the Brighton Amex Stadium. So quarter-final. So hopefully the whole country are going to be behind the lines tonight.
Look, I did mention this, but, you know, this Manchester United tour, and they beat Crystal Palace. I mean, they're unbeaten on this tour as well against Liverpool, against the Australian side, and Crystal Palace now as well. But this Harry Maguire thing, and I do honestly say this with all sincerity, I mean, what is the crime this guy has committed? What is the worst this fella's ever done? And I just honestly say people should wise up and get off this guy's back.
Especially over in Australia, because I'm guessing that these are fans over there that'll be watching the football coming from over here, and it's like, well, it's Harry Maguire.
Yeah.
We boo him.
Easy target.
It's
this is
nonsense.
Yeah.
It's not good, and you hit the nail on the head. You know, we're talking about mental health. I don't care whether these people... You often get the argument saying, oh, well, this guy's earning £3 million a week or whatever it is. It's nonsense. It doesn't matter. But if you're going out to perform, whoever you are, and someone's booing you, and for what, Eamonn? For what?
For what? I agree with you. And what's the worst thing he ever did? You know, I mean, whose life did it affect? And what I want to say is I would really hate if this became a trend for the Premier League.
It looks like it almost is, and that worries me as well. It's not good enough. And I'm one of these people where if it's my team, I think you are allowed to boo what you see. A lot of fans will say it's a disgrace you can't boo your team. Look, if you pay money to watch football and they're underperforming, you boo the team, it's kind of part of football. But if you're picking specific players out and you're just booing them regularly, this is not even pantomime villain stuff. This is just bad. And it's completely counterproductive, and it's stupid.
It is stupid. Look, let's just briefly, because I know I'm always myself fascinated. Football fans are fascinated by the transfer window. Just quickly, is there anything that catches your eye, or what's going on?
Well, I was talking to David about this. He gets very excited about Chelsea signings with Jules Koundé, who looks like he's going to be moving moving over from Sevilla. Great centre-back, and this is what Chelsea are strengthening in. Koulibaly's coming from Napoli, and along with Thiago Silva, so their defence is looking very good. But Koundé is going to be a very good signing. Also, Spurs have signed Jed Spence. There's been talk about... Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that for a while, whether it's going to happen.
I love to see transfers like that, transfers within our own game, people from, you know, slightly lower levels or whatever, you know, just making it up, and therefore the dream can come true.
I agree the dream could come true, and also... If they've played in this country, you get a lot of signings like the Eredivisie. They're bringing them over from the Netherlands. This could be the great new signing. they're unproven. The Premier League, there's nothing like the Premier League. Whereas Jed Spencer's obviously been playing for Middlesbrough and playing for Nottingham Forest, he's been on loan. I think it's a very good signing.
And you also hear that, if you're dealing with, Brazilians or Colombians or, people who are from warmer climates, and you say, yeah, but could they go to Blackburn or Rotherham or Middlesbrough on a wet, windy November night?
That's it.
On a Wednesday.
You never know. You never know. But it's often a gamble when you're signing players that have never played in the Premier League. But, there's so much business which is going on at the moment. Of course. Zinchenko going to Arsenal, that looks like that's going to happen today from Manchester City. We did mention that. It looks like it's going to go through, but today is the day where he's going to move there.
That City seem now to have this relationship with Arsenal. I mean, Jesus is now there as well. And City are doing this sort of rebalancing with the hugely talented squad that they have.
But Mikel Arteta's got history with them because he was working with Pep.
Of course.
So it's like, well, I know them and maybe they're not going to be playing in the first team. We'll take them over here. So that's what's going on there.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you. Paul Coit there with your sport. Paul will be back tomorrow. Up next on the programme, the newspapers with David Miller and Claire Muldoon.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Right, welcome back at 7:40. We're going to take a look at the front pages of the newspapers before we go into the review. The Guardian this morning leading with a wake-up call as UK hits a record-breaking temperature yesterday. More weather warnings on the Daily Mirror this morning. It leads with the image of a fire that destroyed a number of homes in East London. We're live there for you throughout the morning.
Look at this. Hellfire, the headline, with the Sun describing how an inferno ripped through homes in Wennington in East London.
Tinderbox UK ignites. That's the front page of the Eye this morning.
OK, well, let's go through these newspapers with David Miller and Claire Muldoon once again. Claire, you're going to talk about summer, but not the weather in this particular instance. We go to the Times, page 14. Teachers and doctors prepare to strike over the pay offers that the public sector pay offers that were offered yesterday.
Yeah, so this story broke last night, and much to the chagrin, I think, of most of the population, in that doctors were willing to strike over a 5% pay increase. The truth of the matter is, however, that many of the public will be interested because they can't see their doctors, they can't see the GPs, they can't see the first port of call from the triaging of our mental health and our physical health and our health in general. Teachers as well, we spoke about this earlier. We're now coming up to the end of term in England and Wales. Lots of marking will have to be done. That's generally done by staff over the summer. And now they're wanting more money as well. The truth of the matter is, however, that there's a finite public purse, surely. Whereas I was out in support of not only Mick Lynch, but the rail strikes, etc., I'm not so sure I am in respect to teachers, doctors and now dentists.
I think it's not that they're not being appreciated. It's just that there's no money in the kitty.
That's what I was saying, the finite public purse.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if inflation goes to 10% and whatever, David, is it the government's responsibility in the public sector to keep pace and keep those pay demands in line with inflation or not?
Yeah, of course it is. And, you know...
So you think you're in favour of 10% pay rises in the public sector?
No, I didn't quite get... Did I get...
So what I'm saying is that the government's responsibility to keep those salaries in check with how inflation is rising.
Keep salaries in check. Because, you know, why look in the crystal ball when you can read the book? The book shows that when a Labour government in the 70s lost control of public expenditure and inflation, what then happened was vaulting pay demands were settled. And I think inflation peaked, someone will tell me, I'm sure, 25, 26, 27%. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, there is no paper money increases do not guarantee.
But my friend, would you use it in those terms? Would you, if you were addressing a teacher or a doctor or a nurse or a police officer, how would you break the bad news to them?
Tell them straight. My father was a state school teacher. I know what it's like to grow up in a household where, you know, the job was a good one, but the pay was awful. My sister was a nurse, was nursing director of one of the big hospitals. I mean, you know, we come from that kind of background. And I would just say to them, there is no escape by paying yourselves silly money, because with silly money, you end up with a silly economy. And we're on the edge of that. And I think part of that problem is, you know, Boris was never any good at, it's not economics, it's not his special subject, but also the fact that this chap who remains, Bailey, who remains the governor of the Bank of England, what was he doing? Printing more money at a time when there was asleep at the wheel. Absolutely. And mind you, to be fair to him, America is having one of its worst inflationary periods as well. But one thing is absolutely certain. This is a trial of strength. It's a political trial of strength between the trade unions and the government. They think, not wrongly, the government is weak, and they would like, therefore, to monster the government a bit, to bully the government. And the question is this present extraordinary thing that's going on in the Conservative Party going to actually throw up a leader who's capable of standing up to them? Well, the power of prayer is all I can rely on.
Well, that leads us on then to the next story, which is this leadership battle. You've chosen the way it's been covered in the Times on page 12, and the fact that David Davis is calling this the dirtiest leadership contest, perhaps one of the reasons that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak decided that they didn't fancy another televised debate, at least not at this stage in the contest.
See, I don't buy all this. You know, politics is dirty by nature. They all know what it involves. They all know what it takes to survive. It is dog eat dog. So are we all supposed to be sorry for them and see them all as Vestal virgins that none of them...
No, I was going to make exactly that.
But is the point, David, that actually all that is happening is people are making these personal comments rather than talking about proper...
The actual tangible
of course.
Ideas.
And you know, and David Davis...
What have they talked about besides tax cuts?
But wait a minute. Boris's personal integrity or whatever... That was all part of why he's not here anymore.
No, sure.
So I think the personal attacks might very much be warranted.
The comments about whether or not, you know, Penny Mordaunt is lazy or missing in action or whatever it was that she's been describing.
Yeah, but if you're missing in...
what she stands for. Yeah, but it's easy to make that point. Let's hear what her ideas are.
If you went to school, you know who's a bluffer, who can get away with things.
He might have a vested interest in saying that. It's all, as you say, it's all dirty.
I think what has changed everything... I mean, he goes on about the dirtiest contest. And, of course... David Davis likes to be the elder statesman, you know, for reasons that are curious. He's still an active politician when most of us of his generation have moved on to other things. So David Davis, who wasn't a star, by the way, not at all a star, when other boys were around in the playground, has now suddenly become a guy who can always say something and grab a headline. It doesn't make any sense to me. But what went on with leadership contests in the past was generally private and behind closed doors. Social media has thrown it all open. And I do find it depressing. I mean, without wanting to sound pompous, I do find it depressing that nobody can talk sensibly about tax cuts. Nobody can talk sensibly about how you control the economy. It's all sloganising and it doesn't add up. And I find that quite worrying, actually. And is that going to get any better? No. And any of these people, you see, where I think it's really, there's an interesting article in the Times, actually, where one of their columnists makes the point, why are the Conservative membership included in all of this? Having listened to a lot of us saying the Conservative membership may be no more than 60 to 80,000, they've now come up with a figure, 200,000. Very much of a round number, you see. You'd think they'd know. But the point is, everyone now says that Sunak will lose a competition against anybody when the membership votes. But if the membership are going to vote in that way, they should be annihilated.
Yeah, that's the comment Daniel Finkelstein
That's Danny
was making.
Finkelstein.
He was basically saying we've not learnt the lessons.
They should be annihilated. And, you know, some sad old git, even older and sadder than me, will be sitting there in his semi somewhere down in the home counties, and who knows the square root of damn all about anything, and he's going to vote who the leader of the Conservative Party is going to be. I'm sorry, I don't buy that.
OK. Claire, I just want to get this story and this final story in finally and briefly, because in half an hour we have got a professor involved in the study that you're going to talk about. And this is about mental health. It's about depression, page 9 of the Telegraph.
Yeah, it's not only in the Telegraph, it's in quite a few of the papers, Eamonn. And, you know, depression not caused by chemical imbalance is the leader here. 1 in 7 of the population in the UK apparently suffers from depression. That's the statistic. It's been always taught in medical school, apparently, as reported, that depression is a chemical imbalance in the brain, a loss of serotonin, deriving the brain not to send the emotional or the...
Right, so we know that. So if not a chemical imbalance, what is it? They tell us?
They think it's low moods. They think it's things that happen to you in your life that actually cause you environmental things that you go through in your life. You just might not have the coping mechanism to cope with it. And they're saying that whilst people are on antidepressants, they shouldn't stop them because the studies for the drugs rollouts proved the antidepressants worked. So it's going to be really interesting what your professor's going to say, who was involved in the report.
In 25 minutes, OK, we have that professor on this very programme.
Quite a few people emailing in with their experiences of taking antidepressants.
What are they saying?
Well, we'll summarise it when we come to it in about half an hour, but keep those thoughts coming in. Lots more coming our way.
Yeah, thanks,
David, can we talk about the royals? Harry and Meghan have been in New York the last few days. They went for this keynote speech of Harry's on Monday to the UN, continuing their political streak, says the Mail.
Well, Harry is talking about Roe v. Wade. I mean, why isn't he talking about differential calculus, something he really understands? Harry is talking about Roe v. Wade. And here's a question that I would like to pose to the Prince of Wales. Why are you letting him get away with this as a member of the royal family? What right does he have except trying to support his wife's political ambitions in America to be commenting on a major topic within America? Personally, I think the Supreme Court, as chosen by Truss and Trump, a great combination. It's going to be very difficult for America, but the reality is it's their issue, not ours. And of course, what we got to do is see a little further ahead. And what this business shows in the papers, the account of them going out for a triumphant dinner after Harry had made his point about Roe v. Wade, is that if we're not careful, Harry will then get let loose on the royal family. Apparently, he's still planning this memoir. Harry is an unstable character. It's a bit like handling a sort of an explosive that, you know, in the heat could go off. And the question, therefore, is what are the royals going to do about it? Why is Harry being questioned? He's being questioned not because he's a brilliant guy, but because he's Prince Harry. They could do something about that if they so chose.
Just the scariest thing that you said there, and are you serious about this? Do you think Meghan Markle has serious political ambitions? And if so, at what level?
I do. I think that she believes her own propaganda, and I think she'd like to have a run for president. She said that.
Well,
I just can't believe
we'll find out how good an actress she really is then, won't we? 9 minutes before 8 o'clock, the guy's going to be back in 40 minutes' time.
Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. And large fires, as we've been reporting this morning, have ravaged parts of England after yesterday's record-breaking and historic temperatures. Major incidents were declared by the London Mayor and London Fire Brigade, Leicestershire, South Yorkshire Brigades and Buckinghamshire as well.
Conservative MPs today will vote for the final 2 candidates for the leadership race. 3 contenders remain after Kemi Badenoch was voted out yesterday. The former Chancellor Rishi Sunak secured the most votes. The Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt and the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss came second and third.
Inflation has risen to 9.4% in June. That compares to 9.1% in May. The Office for National Statistics says inflation's risen to stand at its highest rate for over 40 years. They added the increase was driven by rising fuel and food prices.
OK, let's get the very latest now on the situation with inflation. And the figures have just been released. We go to our economist, Laurie Laird, on this one.
Hi.
Good morning.
Well, what do you make of what you're hearing and what is that figure?
Headline figure looks ghastly. It really does, up to 9.4%. But as you guys said, it's only food and fuel. There were actually some downward contributions from things like recreation and culture. Clothing was a downward contribution.
What do you mean by recreational culture?
Like recreation and culture,
what do you mean?
Absolutely. Or video games.
Right, they have to compete to stay relevant because they're a luxury option.
Yeah, and they're also they're quite volatile, those, but they were a downward contribution this month. And so I think the important thing here is that this isn't pervasive inflation. It's not good news necessarily because food and fuel are things that we absolutely have to buy. But unlike in the U.S., we're not seeing inflation go beyond food and fuel. We're not seeing it go to every other area of the economy.
Because, Laurie, I would say in real life, people say, right, I have to fill up my car, I have to pay my heating bills, I have to
look,
cook,
you're absolutely right.
But I don't have to watch my streaming service, whatever that streaming service may be.
Absolutely. And it's still scary. These are non-discretionary items. You cannot not buy food. So it is a little bit scary there, but we're not seeing inflation go across the wider economy, which I think will be very helpful for the Bank of England. This is not as scary a number as perhaps people were fearing.
Okay, well, that's what we like to hear, definitely. I suppose
yes, because I always bring you very bad news.
You do, so it's sort of not as awful as
it's not as it's awful, but we're looking at grades.
Let's talk about context in all of this then, because we've been talking this morning about pay keeping in line with inflation, and we've also been talking about the leadership contest and how the landscape looks in the future. So give us a sense of how that all plays out.
OK, where do we start? Should we start on pay or should we start on the leadership? Because this is absolutely fascinating. We got the results of the independent review of public sector pay yesterday. Most pay rises are between 4% and 5%. Some lower paid workers will get raises of up to 9%, but that's a very, very small portion of them. So there is a proper grievance here, isn't there? People saying, we are public sector workers, inflation's at 9%, you're going to give me a pay rise of 5%. In real terms, I'm taking a pay cut. There is a real grievance here. I think for the next party leader, next prime minister, this is going to be a big deal. Do you bump up public sector pay? Now, the argument is we're not going to do that because if wages rise, inflation will rise further. And that's been the inflation model for the past 40 years. Things are different now, mostly because people are less unionized. The workforce is less unionized. The public sector is only 18% of employment. So you don't have that wage price cycle that we have seen in years previous.
One of the horrible things in that settlement that is disguised is saying, right, teachers got X%, whatever it was, but that has to come out of existing school budgets. And that is the con, that is the lie. It's not as if we're saying we value our teachers and therefore have 5-6%, whatever it was. They're actually saying, yeah, have your money if you want, but the kids will suffer.
Absolutely. This is coming out of allocations, and that means that the money has to be taken from somewhere else. But I do think that there is probably scope to raise public sector pay, perhaps not in line with inflation.
If the unions know that, then that will embolden them then to strike.
But the unions do know this, and we really are talking about, I think, a potential autumn of discontent. Look, the transport workers struck, and it didn't affect us the way it did in years past because we have learned to get around public transport. Some of us barely noticed the the transport strike a couple of weeks ago, but this will be different. What happens when junior doctors start striking? Nurses start striking, teachers start striking, and this is a real possibility come the autumn.
Well, that is a worry. Laurie Led, thank you very much for coming in, bringing us not as awful news as you sometimes do.
Next week it could be worse.
Yeah,
so just say again, it could be worse. The figure is, and it was?
9.4%. Look, we might go up to 11% come the autumn when the fuel price cap is elevated again, but we should max out at 11 and then we'll come back down.
Okay, Laurie, thank you very much indeed. All in all, that's what we've all got to deal with, up to 11%. Inflation and therefore coming out of our pockets. How are you coping with that? It is a big worry for most people, especially if you're on some sort of fixed budget.
Absolutely. Look, stay with us. After the break, we're going to be live from Wennington in East London after a fire there ripped through the village. We'll have all the details after your all-important forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. Following yesterday's remarkable heat, well, it's much fresher for all of us today. There'll still be some sunny spells out there. It'll still be fairly warm, but there'll also be a few showers and thunderstorms to look out for. We've seen cold fronts move in during the last 24 hours. They've displaced the heat to the east. Still some hot weather in the east of England, but not on the scale that we saw yesterday. Early rain clearing the east of England, and then showers developing across Wales, the southwest, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will be on the cloudy side. But by the afternoon, as temperatures rise further, well, there is the risk of some slow-moving downpours or even some thunderstorms across parts of central and southern England into East Anglia and the southeast. And it's in East Anglia and the east of England where we're likely to see the highest temperatures, 29 or 30 Celsius, a more manageable 21 for Glasgow and Belfast, and low to mid-20s for much of Wales. So any showers or thunderstorms could be problematic for a time during the afternoon, early evening period, particularly on the roads, but they do ease away overnight. And then, well, for most, it's a dry night, clear spells in the west, a bit more cloud there in the east. Look at the temperatures, 15 to 16 Celsius in the south, 12 or 13 for Belfast and Glasgow. And so certainly much fresher overnight, more comfortable for sleeping for most of us, I think. And then we start off with a lot of cloud across the Midlands into eastern and northern England. Scotland also seeing some cloud and some showers in the far north. Northern Ireland, sunny spells, but the best of the sunshine on Thursday will be across Wales and the southwest. 22 to 24 Celsius in the southwest, 26 for London, 20 for Glasgow and 17 for Belfast. So for most, those temperatures much closer to average and feeling pleasant enough where we do get some sunshine. Mostly dry for many on Thursday, some showers around on Friday and Saturday, and again, low to mid-20s widely.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
London's burning. A major incident declared in the capital as temperatures in Britain make history.
The sheer scale and challenge that we've faced over the last 12 hours in particular has been unprecedented in the history of London Fire Brigade.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 20th of July. You're listening to and watching Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Thank you very much for being with us and giving us your feedback this morning. The Met Office's chief scientist says he wasn't expecting to see, in his career, temperatures reach 40.3 degrees for the first time ever.
Here's how things are looking across the country this morning. London Fire Brigade declared a major incident in Wennington in East London, where terrified residents fled from the inferno.
Pictures now from Dartford. Firefighters tackling huge blazes right into the evening. What you're seeing here is smoke which carried on to the A2. Drivers being warned that that smoke would impact their visibility.
Meanwhile, in Hertfordshire, over 200 firefighters were called to deal with a field fire which spread over 200 acres of farmland.
Maltby in South Yorkshire, another major incident declared there, where a fire that started in Scrubland spread and destroyed homes.
So you can get involved in any of our conversations this morning. Get in touch on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. We particularly want to hear from you if you're in Wennington this morning, affected by that fire there. And hearing from London Fire Brigade, absolutely shocking. They said it was unprecedented in the history of the brigade the last 12 hours.
If you see some of the pictures and the headlines in the newspapers today, I mean, imagine what it was like. I mean, people weren't living in forests and things where trees were burning down around them. They were in streets, and the sparks and the flames reached those houses, and those houses burnt down. Or if there was some other reason for this, which wasn't Scrubland fire, the whole situation was enveloped basically by the heat, and so it just made the whole situation worse. The result was the fire brigades around the whole country, well, they coped with everything that was thrown at them, but it really stretched.
Well, they coped and also they risked their own lives. Let's hear from the Assistant Commissioner, Jonathan Smith, from the London Fire Brigade.
The sheer scale and challenge that we've faced over the last 12 hours in particular has been unprecedented in the history of London Fire Brigade. Since 8 o'clock yesterday morning, we've received 2,670 calls and attended well over 1,000 incidents, the vast majority of which were related to the heat wave that we've been experiencing. Again, as your colleague from Wennington was reporting, the fire in Wennington was not the only significant incident that we attended yesterday. We had 15 other serious and significant incidents spread right across the capital. That's on top of the usual day-to-day emergencies that we would normally respond to. And there was also a number of lower level types of incidents, mainly related to grassland fires and woodland fires, that had just resulted in the tinderbox dry conditions that existed yesterday. And our firefighters were operating in temperatures of 40 degrees, which is something we've not experienced before. And I would like to actually just put on record my immense thanks to firefighters, officers and control staff who coped and managed admirably yesterday in what was extremely challenging conditions. We had 16 firefighters who were suffering from heat-related injuries, 2 of whom were hospitalised, but I'm pleased to say have now been released from hospital. So that gives you a sense of the challenge that we faced yesterday, and hence the reason we declared a major incident.
Really does give a sense of the scale and nature of that incident. Assistant Commissioner Jonathan Smith with all of that from the London Fire Brigade. And to think that 16 firefighters were treated for heat-related injuries, 2 of them taken to hospital, gives you some idea of what they were facing.
Pay our respect to people involved in that, particularly in the gear that they have to wear. We go to Wennington now, which was the big headline grabber of all of this yesterday. Alice Porter. Alice, what can you tell us this morning?
Hi there, good morning. Well, a number of fire engines have come past me here. There's a road blockade in place to allow the fire engines to go into the village because this was a fire that took absolutely hours and hours to get under control. There were calls made to the London Fire Brigade at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't until just before 10 that the fire was eventually brought under control because, as you can see from the pictures there, the absolute scale of this devastation. I mean, 40 hectares of grassland area which has been completely incinerated, rows and rows of terrace houses there. I think what's quite eerie, as you can see with some of the pictures there, there's sort of paddling pools out. Many people were just wanting to enjoy the lovely hot weather, enjoy the sunshine, and then this inferno just ripped through this little village in East London with absolute devastation. And I think it's important to stress, I mean, for the people involved who were there at the scene trying to make sure that family members were safe, children, animals, while watching houses and set on fire, including cars, farmland. I mean, really, really difficult for farmers to see their whole area, the fields that they're working in, that have been turned to absolute dust. So really, really shocking for the people involved there, and very, very difficult for the fire service as well. I mean, one firefighter who was there said this was an absolute hell. And as we were hearing there from the Assistant Commissioner, I mean, can you imagine the task of working in that heat with temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius, with all the kit on, trying to make sure everyone is safe. And I suppose that is the only good news I think we can take from these fires. That is absolutely remarkable that there have been no fatalities recorded yet. The good news also is that it is a little cooler today. We are expecting some rain, but the concern is that there could also be flooding in a situation where we've had across the capital, not just here in the east of London, but across the capital, we've seen devastating fires in Dagenham, in Uxbridge and Upminster. What I think was so extraordinary, this went on to very late last night in Twickenham at the golf course there was a fire there. So I think it's important to, whilst we're here in Wellington today, I think it's important to stress this scale of this across the capital and the difficulty that was for the London Fire Brigade to deal with. But as so far we've had no fatalities recorded, which is a huge testament to the men and women involved in making everybody as safe as possible.
Yes, and you make a good point. You know, the weather might be cooling a little bit since yesterday, but those tinderbox conditions very much remain, and really everybody's sort of trying to count the cost of the damage from yesterday. Thank you very much for that, Alice. We'll be back with you a little bit later on in the programme. But I suppose during this really hot spell that we've been experiencing, nobody feels the pressure more in these sorts of conditions than farmers.
Well, they've got to cultivate the land, they've got to produce crops, they've got to make money, they've got to care for animals as well. We go now to our East Midlands reporter. That's Will Hollis. Will's in Lincolnshire on a farm there with a farmer. Will, tell us the story.
Yeah, good morning from Leadenham here in Lincolnshire. Lincolnshire, it's been in the headlines recently because it's now the hottest place. In Britain, we saw that record-breaking temperature in Coningsby, 40.2, as you said, Eamonn. It's been really hot for everybody, but it's been especially difficult for farmers, especially for people like Andrew Ward. Andrew, you farmed in Lincolnshire for the whole of your life. How has this period been during the heatwave?
There's no doubt it has been the most intense period we ever had. I do remember the droughts in 1976, but they were far longer than this one, but the heat wasn't as extreme. But the last couple of days we've had sort of 40 degrees for 2 days. But really our problems here in Lincolnshire started a long way before that. We've had a very dry spring, and so the ground is exceptionally dry underneath, so the crops being able to pull moisture out the ground, that hasn't been happening for a long while. So this sort of weather period that we're in at the minute isn't really new to us.
For where we are, for people listening on radio, we've got cracked ground around us. We've got wheat that is not quite ready yet, but it's nice and yellow and golden. We've heard of people that are having to harvest early because of this heated period and because of maybe the effects of climate change. How is that affecting farming for you?
It really is affecting us properly here because the crop wheat behind us now, it's a sort of yellowy golden colour. Normally this time of year that will still have a tinge of green to it, and that is ready for harvest in the next week or so. So here we're about 3 weeks ahead of normal, and this is the thing that we have to cope with now. We have very different and fluctuating weather conditions that mean we have to try and adapt all the time, and this is what we do.
And it's a really worrying time for farmers just like you.
It is really, because the problem we've got is obviously our profit relies on how many tonnes we get out that field and put in the shed, and until we actually get the combine in the field here, we don't really know how much damage the weather has done. And of course, not far away as well, we've got a lot of vegetable areas in Lincolnshire here. Lincolnshire produces 27% of the nation's vegetables, and we've got situations there, I know, where workers, it's too hot for them to work. We've got machinery is overheating and boiling, we've got fields catching fire, so there are just huge problems at the minute with the weather.
We've seen the fire service looking at a lot of grassland fires, woodland fires, as well as big fires in London. We're going to be taking a little bit of a walk around Andrew's farm to see if there was any damage. We see cracked drought-ridden ground all around us, and we'll hopefully bring you some more information as to what's been happening here in Lincolnshire later, Eamonn and Isabel.
Well, thank you very much indeed. So we're all in this together. Well, the irony is the weather's going to be probably quite different for a lot of people today, with the main risk flooding. And again, the fire brigades will have to be involved in all of that. The ground will be hard, rock solid, so the water will run off into overworked drains, and so it all backs up.
Next, there'll be locusts. It's just one thing after another at the moment,
But, you know,
isn't it?
London is one of those cities that so many buildings have basements. Therefore, it's below ground. Therefore,
you have a basement, you're sorted.
You're flooded. No, you're flooded.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant in the hot weather. Yeah, you're right.
No, you're completely flooded.
Yeah, well.
You may be. You're fine in the hot weather. You're right. But then when it rains,
nightmare.
It pours in from the pavement.
Right, we're going to talk about politics now, something less controversial, less hot. Candidates running in the Conservative leadership contest will be whittled down to the final two today. All-important day, really. OK,
so the last ballot, last time out, the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, secured the most votes. He had support from 118 MPs.
Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt came in second with 92 votes, and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss secured 86.
OK, so where are we at? We're going to face one more ballot from the MPs today, and that will give us the final two. The final two will then go on to face the membership.
Well, let's speak to the Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray. He joined us last week. You described the shortlist as a shower of mediocrity. How do you feel about the final three?
Well, I think it's looking a bit like a sort of version of Britain Hasn't Got Talent. It's a pretty dire outlook, and I don't just say that as me as a journalist. I said, speak to a lot of Tories, some Tory MPs, and there's a sort of sense of gloom and despair about the lack of a decent replacement for Boris Johnson. And perhaps it's also the fact that this is very much a poisoned chalice. I mean, everybody expects there's going to be a brutal winter in Britain. There's going to be probably a recession, terrible inflation, massive energy costs. Whoever gets this job is going to have a very, very difficult time. So, in a sense, it's admirable of them to take on this job.
OK, so out of three, and you're basically saying we need somebody fully armed, somebody who's capable of taking on what's ahead. Out of those three, who do you think is the best of a bad bunch, then?
I'd probably say Rishi Sunak is the best of a bad bunch.
Will the membership agree with you? That is the question.
No, I don't think they will. I think they see him as everything that was bad about Boris and nothing that was good. They regard his chancellorship as a disaster, which it was. But then I would say on the plus side, he does have some economic competence. He is intelligent. He's highly intelligent. And best of a bad bunch, as I say.
Right, OK, so if you think he's the best of a bad bunch, but the membership pretty much are never going to choose him, do you think there needs to be a question mark about the way Prime Ministers can be chosen in this situation? And I'm talking about a piece in the Times today, I think Daniel Finkelstein's written about. This is time to cut the membership out of this decision. And I can hear all of our viewers and listeners absolutely up in arms at that suggestion, but it's being discussed in the papers this morning. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think generally making these processes more democratic is a good idea. I think you would need more scrutiny. You'd need more debates, more varied debates, because, the fact is Kemi Badenoch was a very impressive candidate, an outsider in many ways, but she had very little scrutiny. And the fact you can get somebody getting that close to the most important job in Britain without any test is notable.
Well, I'll tell you who we're going to get close to now. We're going to get close to one of our viewers and listeners. Go to Kent, to a place called Biddenden there, and let's speak to Jeannie Brick. Jeannie, good morning to you. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed. You heard Freddie Gray there from the Spectator talking about he's not impressed with this final three and their capabilities. What do you think of who's left there in that race?
Well, first of all, I'm not impressed with journalists like him who constantly talk down everybody. Basically, they've got what they want. They got rid of Boris Johnson, and now they can't do anything but moan and groan with what the alternatives are. I think it's about time they shut up and let the people decide, i.e. Conservatives, the grassroots members. I won't say too much about the MPs because this is probably a family show, and I don't want to disgrace myself. But there you are.
Yeah, I want to bring Freddie in at this point, and we'll come straight back to you. But Jeannie, you should probably shut up.
Well, as a self-hating journalist, I would definitely agree. Journalists do play a far bigger role in the national conversation. In my defence, I would say I never called for Boris Johnson to go. And in fact, I've written several articles saying that they will miss him as soon as he's gone. And I think, I dare to say, that I'm already being proven right on that point.
Interesting. Oh, OK, let's come back to you, Jeannie. Are you a Conservative Party member, and will you have a vote? And do you share the views of some people who've got in touch with me on Twitter who say, wouldn't it be a real message to Sir Graham Brady and the 1922 committee, and when we're voting for the final two, crossing them both out and writing Boris Johnson on there?
Well, no, I don't think so. We are where we are, and as voters, we should do the responsible thing and make a proper vote. I'm going for Liz Truss. I'm sorry to disappoint your journalist there, for the simple reason that she has a track record. I don't like where we are, and it wasn't the members who actually put us where we are. It was the media and some idiots in the House of Commons. That's the fact, but that's where we are. Liz Truss was a very good international trade secretary, and she is a good foreign secretary. She also believes in a low tax and small state, which is conservatism. Her idea of actually kicking the COVID debt down the road so that we're paying it as a war debt over a long period of time, I think is a pretty good idea.
Jeannie,
yes?
Saying so, I mean, I'm just going to say about Liz Truss, right, as an international trade secretary, saying so that she was good doesn't make her so. What I'm saying to you is, because this has passed over my head, what did she do on the international trade front? Where is the wealth that she secured and brought into this country? What are the deals she did with America, South America, with India? Because I'm sorry, and I may genuinely just have missed that, but I'm not aware that there was any headline-grabbing deals that she captured.
Well, of course there wasn't, because everything she did was talked down by the media. But she did set up deals with Australia. She's very keen on opening up the Far Eastern market, which is an excellent idea. So I think she did a good job as International Trade Secretary. I'm sorry, but I do think she did a good job.
And I also think Jeannie, hasn't she? She has worked closely with Japan as well and trying to secure a post-Brexit deal with them.
Yeah.
But I just want to ask you on her economics, and this is something that we've talked about a lot in the programme here, and yes, it is Conservative to cut taxes, and there's no one disputing that. But it seems to be the view of people who know a lot more than me, and I'm just putting this to you. Yesterday we had the head of the International Monetary Fund. We've had the Office for Budget Responsibility coming out and saying now is not the time to cut taxes. We've also had former chancellors saying the same thing. Now, these are all experts in these things, and indeed, as Freddie was just saying, Rishi Sunak does have a good economic background and a good head on his shoulders. Are we to trust Liz Truss on this when everybody else is saying the opposite?
Well, we have to, don't we? Because that's the position that everybody has put us in. Rishi Sunak basically sprayed money all over the place, which he had to do during COVID. I do realise that. But his whole ethos appears to be tax everybody until the pipsqueak and give them benefits and handouts to see them, to keep them sweet, to see them through. Well, I'm not an economist and I'm not a politician. So like you've just said, there are a lot of people a lot more knowledgeable than me. But that's what I feel in my gut, that I want a Conservative Prime Minister. I don't want a socialist or a Liberal Democrat. And that is what I think in his heart. That is what I think Rishi Sunak is.
But you may end up, be careful again what you wish for, because you may end up with a combination of a socialist and what are they called? Liberal Democrats. I never remember. Combination there. If you put in someone that's beatable at the polls and doesn't have a general appeal. But Jeannie, obviously heartfelt, you're impassioned about it, you believe what you believe. I just want to get Freddie to sum up what you're talking about and her belief. I mean, she believes that Liz Truss is a true blue, and really that's what she wants.
Well, I think there's a lot of doubt about that. There's a lot of talk about the fact she was a Remainer and now she's an ardent Brexiteer. And I think it's unfair to say that that the press, the media, has gone after Liz Truss. Particularly, if you look at most newspapers, particularly right-wing newspapers, they are going very hard after Penny Mordaunt in ways that are obviously briefed by the Truss campaign. So I don't think there's any particular media animus against Liz Truss. Although, of course, if she becomes Prime Minister, we'll see quite a lot of it.
Listen, guys, absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Jeannie,
do you know, it's been
to
such a pleasure talking to you, Jeannie, and listening to what you say
too.
with passion. Much better than this guy in the studio. Much better. Much better.
Don't mince your words, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Welcome back any time. Very gallantly taken, I may add, Freddie, to you as well.
Jeannie, before we say goodbye to you, I want to ask you about something, because we've got a fascinating professor and a fascinating study up next, which is talking about depression. And they're talking about whether antidepressants are any good for people or not. And I don't know, I mean, I think we all know someone who suffers with their mental health or someone who gets pretty down. Do you have thoughts about being prescribed? I mean, if you've got a condition, should you be prescribed medicine, or should it be something else, or should it be a combination of both?
I think it should be a combination of both. I do worry about the long-term effects of antidepressants. I haven't been there myself in a big way, but I have been depressed. I've certainly been depressed in the last 2 years. I can tell you that much. But I think that there's a lot to be said for the cognitive behaviour therapy. That I think that does help an awful lot of people. So I think a bit of common sense and a combination of antidepressants and CBT, and supporting people, and hopefully giving people somebody to talk to. That is so important. That really is vital.
Well, thank you for talking to us, and stay tuned after the break, because that's exactly, Jeannie, what we will be doing. Thank you very much for your company today. We will be discussing that new study. It's about depression. It raises questions about whether antidepressant tablets, medication, actually makes any difference.
First of all, though, here's that all-important weather forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. Following yesterday's remarkable heat, well, it's much fresher for all of us today. There'll still be some sunny spells out there. It'll still be fairly warm, but there'll also be a few showers and thunderstorms to look out for. We've seen cold fronts move in during the last 24 hours. They've displaced the heat to the east. Still some hot weather in the east of England, but not on the scale that we saw yesterday. Early rain clearing the east of England, and then showers developing across Wales, the southwest, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will be on the cloudy side. But by the afternoon, as temperatures rise further, well, there is the risk of some slow-moving downpours or even some thunderstorms across parts of central and southern England into East Anglia and the southeast. And it's in East Anglia and the east of England where we're likely to see the highest temperatures, 29 or 30 Celsius, a more manageable 21 for Glasgow and Belfast, and low to mid-20s for much of Wales. So any showers or thunderstorms could be problematic for a time during the afternoon, early evening period, particularly on the roads, but they do ease away overnight. And then Well, for most, it's a dry night, clear spells in the west, a bit more cloud there in the east. Look at the temperatures, 15 to 16 Celsius in the south, 12 or 13 for Belfast and Glasgow, and so certainly much fresher overnight, more comfortable for sleeping for most of us, I think. And then we start off with a lot of cloud across the Midlands into eastern and northern England. Scotland also seeing some cloud and some showers in the far north. Northern Ireland, sunny spells, but the rest of the sunshine on Thursday will be across Wales and the southwest. 22 to 24 Celsius in the southwest, 26 for London, 20 for Glasgow and 17 for Belfast. So for most, those temperatures much closer to average and feeling pleasant enough where we do get some sunshine. Mostly dry for many on Thursday, some showers around on Friday and Saturday, and again, low to mid-20s widely.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's just coming up to 8:30, and this is a really important interview that we're about to do because with us now in the studio is Professor Moncrieff, and a new study shows there is no clear evidence that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in your brain.
Yeah, and this is absolutely landmark because for years people have been told that it's due to a lack of serotonin. We can speak now to Professor Moncrieff. She joins us in the studio. She's a professor of psychiatry at the University College of London, and you were behind this author.
You're the lead,
behind
author.
This research.
You're
the lead author. This seems to me like a landmark set of results, that this could be a total game changer in the way that we tackle depression in this country.
So there's been an idea around for a long time that actually the evidence about serotonin doesn't stack up, that there are studies out there that are negative or inconclusive, but no one before has got all the research together and looked at it in total and found that not one single area of research on serotonin, at least the main areas, really provides any convincing evidence that depression is associated with low serotonin levels.
But then what is depression associated? What causes it? And I mean, we're talking about a debilitating condition, and we're going to come to you listening and you watching about this because you're telling us your stories. And I do also want to say we will give you a phone number for help if you are really, really down. But so what is causing the problem?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Of course, there's research going on into lots of other possible biological causes and has been for decades, but none of them have come up with any more convincing evidence than the evidence on serotonin. The evidence on serotonin is one of the areas that's been most thoroughly researched over the last few decades. So my interpretation of this research is that we need to look at depression differently. We need to stop seeing it as a brain disorder and start understanding it as an emotional reaction to people's circumstances.
Right.
Go on.
The stronger people or weaker people understand that is popping a pill the answer? Because if you're, throwing all our assumptions about this up in the air, where do we stand on antidepressant tablets?
So antidepressants were the justification for using antidepressants, particularly the new type, the SSRIs that were introduced in the 1990s.
And does that stand for serotonin?
That stands for serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Okay.
And they were a new class that were introduced in the 1990s. And the justification for their use was the idea that they would boost serotonin levels by blocking the transporter protein that takes the serotonin out of the synapse and basically deactivates it. And so this paper is showing that if there's no association between depression and serotonin, that justification for using antidepressants isn't there. In other words, we really don't have evidence that they are rectifying an underlying abnormality.
But Professor, you know as well as I know that people will look for a crutch, they will look for a mask, something to just put a buffer between them and what they're going through. And if a tablet is now not going to do that, where do they go? What do they do?
So I think that's a really good question. And I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. I think, depression is different in everyone that has it. And that's because the causes of depression are different in everyone that has it. And the first thing is to tackle the causes, is to address why someone is depressed. And there are lots of things about modern society that make people susceptible to depression. We live in very stressful times, huge cost of living crisis, so many people in debt, loneliness rife. So those are some of the main things.
Watching the news and think the world's coming to an end.
Professor Moncrieff, what I want to know is, OK, the cause may not be a lack of serotonin, but if antidepressant pills make people feel better, is it still problematic for them to continue to take them? Or are you suggesting that overnight everybody needs to come off these? Because that in itself carries heavy risks.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think it's a very important message to get across to people that people shouldn't stop these tablets suddenly. If they do decide they want to try and come off them, that should be done slowly and gradually and with support. So that's very important to say. But the research on antidepressants actually shows they are only marginally better than a placebo tablet. So an awful lot of the effect of the antidepressant is the hope that people get from taking a tablet. And that is an important message in itself, that actually giving people hope and support, letting people know that other people care and are trying to help them, that in itself is helpful. The other way that I think antidepressants sometimes work is that they can block or blunt people's emotions. And they do that across the board. That's not just an effect on depression, that's an effect on positive emotions too. And so when people are in a really, really bad place, maybe that can take the edge off those bad feelings, but it has negative consequences too.
Yeah, totally get that, and that's an interesting way of looking at everything again. But I can imagine someone sitting in a doctor's surgery and the doctor saying to them, well, actually, a tablet's not the answer. Here's what you've got to go and do. I mean, I think that would break a lot of people. I mean, it's like saying people who are in pain and doctors saying to them, oh, we don't want you on those tablets. Well, I'm telling you, you would eat grass, you would do anything. You would eat a handbag, if it killed pain for you, if you suffer from chronic pain. If you suffer from chronic depression, that's what I'm worried about, because in terms of, I don't know how you would call it, the aftercare or counselling or whatever, the resources, they're like wafer thin. There's nothing there.
They're better than they were. We do have counselling services, but there's still, and therapy services, but there's still a wait for most people. and that is difficult. I think the point is, though, that from the scientific point of view, we have to be sure that our treatments are effective and that they're doing more good than harm.
I get you.
And the worry is that if antidepressants aren't doing what we thought they were doing, are they really doing more good than harm? What are they doing to the brain? And might that be harmful?
Yeah, look, we're so lucky to have you in here talking to us about this today. Your research being reported in all of the papers this morning, and as you say, an absolute game changer, all that you've done. But I want to ask you, away from the research, just an overview of psychiatry in your career. We talk about the societal problems being a huge cause for the depression that we're seeing today. Have you noticed a significant increase during your career of people suffering from depression? And do you think this is something that's going to get worse?
I don't know. I couldn't sort of scientifically say whether there's been an increase or not, but I would say that there is a huge, huge amount of suffering out there which is related to the difficulties people are having with everyday life. Working in general practice or in a service that takes referrals from general practice, that there is a tidal wave of misery out there. There really is. Of people just struggling to get through their
Let me
lives.
just talk about some of the people struggling. Sarah says mental health is real, depression is real, suicide is real. Always check up on people you love. These types of discussions need to happen more.
Can I read out that number for Samaritans just straight away after you've read that one, because we know suicide is a huge problem when it comes to depression. The telephone number, if you do need somebody to speak to, and you can contact them 24 hours a day, speak to somebody for free, 365 days a year, the number is 116123. We'll give you that number again in just a moment, but I just think because of Sarah's comments, they're really worth mentioning it. Ozzy has got in touch. Depression isn't always at 3 a.m. Sometimes it hits you at 3 p.m. when you're with your friends and you're halfway through a laugh. And it's so true, isn't it? This is something that it doesn't discriminate where you are or who you are.
Taz says, as someone who suffers from mental health issues, it really makes me sad when I think about all the times my depression or anxiety made me a bad friend. But these things are really hard to open up about. And we just thank people like the Professor doing what she's doing. But I leave you in the last words I want to leave you with, and it is really speaking to these people directly, people who suffer this epidemic there is of depression. If you're not going to give them the tablets, if you're not going to give them the pills, if you're saying to them, well, actually, you can take them, but they're not really helping you, what would you say to those people going through this, which would give them some sort of hope, some sort of light at the end of the tunnel?
What I would say is that people come out of depression. It may take a while and it may take a lot of support, but people do come through it.
I know someone who didn't come out.
No, you're right. Some people, really sadly take their own lives. But what I was trying to say is depression is something that comes to an end. And if people can get through it, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Even people with really severe depression. I was talking to a doctor last night in an educational session who'd had really severe depression for many years, but had got over it. And what she said had helped her was understanding both what had made her vulnerable, what it had been about her childhood that had made her vulnerable, what the circumstances were that had brought it on in the first place, and learning to live with really difficult and unpleasant emotions, which took her a long time, but which she did manage to do in the end.
Do you hold any value in CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and how that can be a sort of help for people?
Certainly, for some people, maybe it doesn't work for everyone, but I think as a way of trying to understand how you've got to where you are and how to manage your mood, it can be really useful.
Professor, I would love to talk to you again. It's been an honour having you here. Good luck with the work that you do and continue down that path. You've been listening and watching Professor Joanna Moncrieff. She was the lead study of the author you will see in all the papers today. She's a Professor of Psychiatry at University College London. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And just a reminder of that telephone number, once again, if you do want to get in touch with the Samaritans, if at home you're watching this and you're feeling bleak, there is help available. And as the Professor was saying, there is support out there and you can come out of depression. That contact, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, is 116123 on the bottom of your screen there. do reach out, do ask for help if you need it.
Folks, keep in touch with us. GB Views, let us know. We'll be back after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's 8:42. It was a historic day yesterday. Britain experienced its hottest day on record ever, with temperatures reaching 40.3 degrees.
OK, look, London, it's all over the front pages. I mean, we're talking about within the M25 area. Absolutely incredible. Let's now move on and talk to Paul Scully, who is the Minister for London. And I'm sure, Paul, the first thing you want to do is to pay tribute to all the services, the fire brigade in particular, and what they had to deal with yesterday.
Oh, they were absolutely incredible and immense. We had meetings making sure that they were all stepped up, and boy, did they have to respond to so much yesterday. So my thanks goes to them. I think the Mayor's described it as the busiest day for the fire service since the Second World War, with 5 times the amount of calls that are coming through. So they were really stretched, but they really stepped up, as they always do.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we've spoken to the London Fire Brigade this morning. They talked about attending over 1,000 incidents, and 16 of their own suffered from heat-related injuries. 2 of them had to go to hospital to be treated. Unbelievably and miraculously, nobody has lost their life during these fires. But the pictures we're showing on screen at the moment show the scenes in Wennington in East London yesterday, the likes of which we've not seen from these kinds of things before. How worried are you that this is going to become a regular feature if, as scientists are telling us, these kinds of extreme temperatures could happen every summer, every 3 years?
Well, I think we've got to get the balance right in terms of making sure these extreme situations that we prepare for, that we don't overly worry people on a day-to-day basis. This isn't about scaremongering, but nonetheless, you know, the fact is it's a record for this country. Tells you something. It's never happened before, and these things are more likely to happen, and that's why we do need to sensibly take people with us as we drive towards that net zero target by 2050. But it's all got to be done in a way that's transitional, that takes people, businesses and every layer of government with us along the way.
3 remaining candidates in the Tory leadership contest, do you think, are most committed to reaching those targets in a way that will bring people with them and make sure that we're able to cope with increasing temperatures?
I think they've all committed to net zero by 2050. I think what the candidates have been looking at is that what we need to do in the here and now, whilst the cost of living situation is so acute, about is there anything we can do around the green levies and the like to ease the burden on people? But that's what I mean about taking people with us, because if we are just hitting them with big tax sticks to get to that position, then really we're going to lose the confidence of people in that drive. And there is no plan B. We've just got to make sure we transition away from fossil fuels, but do it in a economically responsible way and a way that brings people along with us.
Want to pin your colours to the mast then and tell us who you're supporting?
To be honest, I haven't publicly declared, and I'm sitting there. I will take my time, even now. Each of the last few ballots, I've tried to work out, and probably about 10 minutes before I've put my cross on the ballot, that's when I've decided. Okay. I supported Nadeem Zahawi in the early stage, and what I'm looking for is much the same thing as I thought then. I want a good communicator and someone that can actually deliver for people in the here and now. Because people are crying out for support from this government, and a government that actually can show that it relates to them and the issues that they're facing. That's what I'm looking
Paul
for
Scully,
in the next Prime Minister.
Really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we're going to go through the newspapers now. We've got David Mellor, Claire Muldoon back again. And we want to start, there's an image I just want to show people. And here you have, well, you can just see it's a big enough picture. We know I'm going to explain what's in it. It's this Ayatollah here of Iran and President Vladimir Putin, who usually doesn't leave the Kremlin or that massive big table that he puts between everybody. But here he is, actually shaking hands. David Mellor, tell us why.
Well, he's shaking hands because Russia are very short of friends. And Russia having been driven to the edge of extremism, who does he meet there? Well, the Ayatollah who runs Iran. And I think that, I mean, it's desperation, this. They want to make out that it's powerful. And, of course, they have a great capability, particularly in the Middle East, to promote terrorism and so on. But Putin has taken Russia away from the centre of world events, and he now has to cozy up to
but when you say cozy up,
like that.
I'm sitting here thinking, right, so what's in this? I mean, Iran, never really a friend of the West, and what's the deal that they could be doing?
I think merely that Iran has still got a lot of oil. They have ways on the...
Russia has a lot of grain.
Russia has a lot of grain. Iran can also market Russian oil outside of sanctions. Yeah, I think it's...
So you're suggesting that maybe, if I'm reading this right, that Russia would ship the oil to Iran and Iran would sell it on behalf of Russia?
Yes, that would be...
Right.
They wouldn't even necessarily have to ship it. The contracts would be...
Yeah, because they can circumnavigate it because of the trade deals. Russia are exempt from trading, but Iran isn't, so they can get lots of things
Ever since Jimmy Carter took the view that the Ayatollahs were better than the Shah of Iran, Iran has been a real threat. Russia and Iran, of course, have worked together, and that's why we still have Syria in the state that it's in. And I think that, I mean, the problem for Putin is where else now does he go? Until he gets the Germans and Monsieur Macron back under his control, which they may be starting to do with opening up that pipeline and so on. I can see it coming now.
But the conscience of Iran, Claire, they are actually contributing to the war in Ukraine. I mean, Putin will attack who in NATO is supporting Ukraine. But here you've got him.
And President Erdogan as well, of Turkey as well. He's trying to nib his way in as well. But interestingly, I think that's more of a waxwork, actually, of Putin. I don't think it particularly looks like him. But the second news in brief below, learn to love your rats, Parisians are told. I don't think that's too far from the truth from the visual that's there.
What is that story that you're referring to?
So not so much ratatouille, but ratatouille. That rats outlive, or are actually in terms of proportion of of people to rats, 2-1 in Paris and Marseille.
Tell you what, if that's the case in Paris, it's probably the case in London, because they're very similar cities in terms of size and waterways and all
And
the
they
rest of
found that
it.
COVID lockdowns and work in the city's underground infrastructure, which we're surfacing, have actually pushed the rats up. But one of the left-wing mayors of one of the 18th arrondissements in Paris has called for them a more humane way of killing them. She doesn't want them defeated. She wants them to roam around, basically, and they've got to learn to love them.
What, rats, mice, whatever, they're vermin.
Yes, vermin. They are vermin. Get them out.
I always remember reporting on the Olympics from Sydney and being down there and going around the waterways of Sydney and down by the harbour and things, crawling, out of me, crawling with rats. These are the sort of things people don't want you to see. But then we contribute to this because we buy takeaways, we drop food around the place all the time.
And urban foxes as well.
Well,
they don't seem to be able to come in and do anything because they're all...
I'm a bit better disposed towards urban foxes.
Are you?
I am very much so.
No, hang on.
I shouldn't be.
You shouldn't be.
Why?
Look, I commute, as I say, between London and Dorset. In my little place in Dorset, we see the odd fox. But when I come to London, I see lots of foxes.
Yeah.
One in our garden just the other day.
And that's what Claire's talking about.
The urban fox is an invention of urban society and people choosing to feed foxes who are not
Excuse me,
urban
can I also
beasts.
say councils who decide...
They're not urbane like you.
Yes,
nor are
but
they...
councils who decide that you put your rubbish and your waste in plastic bags as opposed to, in the old days, steel bins.
Well, not only that, but food waste boxes. Foxes have now been shown they're so clever, they can actually open them.
But I don't hate foxes because of that.
Oh, do you not hate the mating calls at 3-4 o'clock in the morning?
I love to see a fox.
They pee and they...
Oh, no, I hate them.
I'm still delighted to see a fox of a morning, but I share your feelings about rats. I saw a rat in Merton in broad daylight last week, and I jumped out of my skin.
But they're getting bigger.
Claire, spot on. There was a rat the size of me.
Turbo rat.
Right? There was, honestly, it was fatter than me, right? And I saw this.
Where did you see this?
I saw it outside a pharmacy, right? Walking down a side street between Tesco's and this pharmacy, right? And it was quite a wide road, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and people were walking up and down, and the fox was waddling between
fox or rat?
Sorry, fat
rat.
Fat
Watch what you say.
Right, so it was the rat, right? So I went into the pharmacist and I said to the pharmacist, I really want to...
I'll have what he's on.
There is a massive rat at the back of your chemist shop.
And they said, sit down, sir, we have a pill for you.
Basically, yes. They said, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. I said, no, yes, I did. Either that or it was a small dog. I'm not sure what it was. But it was...
Has the pill worked? That's what I want to know.
But I tell you, it was absolutely there. So we have to learn to love them. That's them saying we're not going to waste a budget on them.
Well, that's...
We're out of control.
I just don't know. Well, they're not. Well, they are out of control. They've got the budgets, but they just don't know what to do with them. There was actually one person said that rather than trapping or using poison that actually causes painful death, internal hemorrhaging, they're experimenting with non-lethal methods such as contraception. How the hell is that going to work?
Well, there's another story in the Mail. This is very, very topical. You're talking about...
This is your mate, Kate Beckinsale.
This is my very close friend, the actress Kate Beckinsale. And who she messaged me this week about this very subject, because I see that fox like a dog, right? So why would you want to kill a dog? And she's made friends with this fox, this urban fox and whatever it is, but she's attracted a lot of controversy, as Claire and David were saying there, that she shouldn't be encouraging them. Should she? Shouldn't she? Let us know what your view is on that.
David, can we talk about IndieRef 2? You've chosen this in the Telegraph, and this is talking about flyers which use photographs of an English wind farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, I actually thought that was one for Claire.
Oh, right, OK. Well, we'll go to
only because Claire is a fully paid-up Scottish person.
She is indeed.
Yeah, so what's happened is Nicola Sturgeon, in her... I'm actually lost for words now.
Yesterday, wasn't it?
Was it really? I don't know. I'm blocked on Twitter from her, so I wouldn't know. But now she's still going on about this IndieRef for October 2023 next year. But what they've used is the SNP party have used produced a new flyer with photographs of an English wind farm. And of course, that's nothing to do with Scottish independence and what they can actually do to sustain any form of energy. So instead of using the ones down in Berwick-upon-Tweed and Basingthwaite, she's actually used an English one. So yet again... Is
that not just a mistake?
Well, it is a mistake, but how many... I'll tell you what else is a mistake. IndyRef is going to be a mistake. The Scottish Nationalist Party are a huge mistake. OK, so it's not only just the fact they can't get the geographical location of a wind farm correct.
But Claire, you say that, but
I do say that.
There's nearly 50% of people in Scotland who think they're obviously not a mistake.
Nearly. Not quite, and not quite enough to drive the independence vote over the line that it has to be. And don't let's forget, and I hate to keep banging on about it, but this was supposed to be a once-in-a-generational vote, and it's not the case. So we'll see what the Supreme Court, the advocate of the Supreme Court, makes for this.
Else, and I'm purely playing devil's advocate.
As you do.
You're going to face a lot of people shouting and screaming.
Oh, I do.
Today, and they're going to say, who's she?
Exactly.
She doesn't live there.
Yeah.
I mean, she's Scottish and she lives in London.
Yeah.
It affects us all.
But it does affect us all. It does affect us all. And people have said to me, she's just whinging on about it because she can't get free education for her children, tertiary. That's not the case. That's not the point. It's anyone living in England that cannot get that, not just my kids. I'm merely bringing the fact to the table and exposing the fact and exposing the absolute
actually,
sham that is the SNP.
One of the things that was so wrong about the vote last time was that people who were in Scotland temporarily, I think the Mail found a sort of Herr Hitler from Germany, he was able to vote. He was voting for Scottish independence. And yet someone like you, who was Scottish, as Scottish as the day you were born.
Yeah.
Because you've lived in England, you don't get a vote. That's outrageous, actually. You don't cease to be Scottish because you accepted the advice of Dr. Johnson that the best sight a Scottish person sees is the road to England. Well, why not?
But that applies in lots of places. I mean, I do get a vote in Northern Ireland because I'm a resident of Northern Ireland, but I don't use it because I just don't vote in general. But it wouldn't just apply to Claire being an ex-pat.
Oh, no. And in fact, there are even members of the armed forces serving the country who, because they weren't in Scotland, didn't get a vote.
Right, OK.
Outrageous.
Outrageous, but thanks for being outrageous, you two
we've
today.
enjoyed you. Thank you for joining us again.
You don't want us to be outraged any longer. You're chucking us out.
We have to go. We have to go. Time. We are slaves
We're on
to the
the
clock.
next item, which
so much more to cover as well.
I know,
all these papers.
One of the things we're going to talk about is weight. And
junk
this whole
food
debate.
warnings.
Yeah, warnings about junk food.
If you think about a cigarette packet and it's got a picture of a mashed up pair of lungs and it's a bit of a, knee-jerk reaction to stop you buying cigarettes, should the same be done on junk food? Would it make you think twice if the picture had...
Was a big belly.
Well, a big belly, some cellulite, or maybe worse, a heart that is clogged with arteries filled with stuff.
Who have just released loyalty cards.
Oh, for the Happy Meals.
For the Happy Meals.
Indeed. Well, look, we're going to be talking to a restaurateur and indeed a man who has made a living on tackling fat. We'll talk about that after the break.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. Following yesterday's remarkable heat, well, it's much fresher for all of us today. There'll still be some sunny spells out there. It'll still be fairly warm, but there'll also be a few showers and thunderstorms to look out for. We've seen cold fronts move in during the last 24 hours. They've displaced the heat to the east. Still some hot weather in the east of England, but not on the scale that we saw yesterday. Early rain clearing the east of England, and then showers developing across Wales, the southwest, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will be on the cloudy side. But by the afternoon, as temperatures rise further, well, there is the risk of some slow-moving downpours or even some thunderstorms across parts of central and southern England into East Anglia and the southeast. And it's in East Anglia and the east of England where we're likely to see the highest temperatures, 29 or 30 Celsius, a more manageable 21 for Glasgow and Belfast, and low to mid-20s for much of Wales. So any showers or thunderstorms could be problematic for a time during the afternoon, early evening period, particularly on the roads, but they do ease away overnight. And then, well, for most, it's a dry night, clear spells in the west, a bit more cloud there in the east. Look at the temperatures, 15 to 16 Celsius in the south, 12 or 13 for Belfast and Glasgow. And so certainly much fresher overnight, more comfortable for sleeping for most of us, I think. And then we start off with a lot of cloud across the Midlands into eastern and northern England. Scotland also seeing some cloud and some showers in the far north. Northern Ireland, sunny spells, but the best of the sunshine on Thursday will be across Wales and the southwest. 22 to 24 Celsius in the southwest, 26 for London, 20 for Glasgow and 17 for Belfast. So for most, those temperatures much closer to average and feeling pleasant enough where we do get some sunshine. Mostly dry for many on Thursday, some showers around on Friday and Saturday, and again, low to mid-20s widely.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
London's burning. A major incident is declared in the capital as temperatures in Britain make history.
The sheer scale and challenge that we've faced over the last 12 hours in particular has been unprecedented in the history of London Fire Brigade.
A very good morning to you. The time just after 9 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 20th of July. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with me, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster.
So the Met Office's chief scientist has said he never expected to see temperatures reach 40.3 degrees in his career. Here's how things are looking across the country this morning.
London Fire Brigade declared a major incident. This is Wennington in East London. We're going to talk about that very shortly. Residents there terrified. It turned into an absolute inferno with houses burning down.
In Dartford, firefighters tackled that huge blaze you can see there into the evening. Drivers on the A2 warned that smoke billowing from the fire would impact on visibility.
Let's look at Hertfordshire. What you're looking at here is a field fire, and that took up the resources and capabilities of 200 firefighters over a 200-acre area of farmland.
Another major incident was declared in Maltby in South Yorkshire, where a fire that started in scrubland spread and destroyed many people's homes.
Folks, really thankful for your involvement in the programme today. You're talking about IndieRef, you're talking about foxes. Most of all, you're talking about depression and how that is affecting you guys. Barnaby says, what if depression and anxiety aren't disorders, but completely reasonable responses to reality, which is what the science is now saying. They're saying antidepressants aren't the answer. That depression, a new study says, is not the result of a chemical imbalance in the brain.
Damien said, I'm about to take my antidepressant with a new medication that can cause depression. Solving mental issues with pill after pill is just a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, and it probably has happened in a depressive epidemic. Barnaby again says, just like that last comment, therefore, constantly taking pills to counter real emotions have consequences. The Samaritans, we do want to say to you, because we're very touched by what you're feeling, what you're going through, your loneliness. Even if you're not alone, a lot of you feel alone because of this condition. So the Samaritans, you can contact them 24 hours a day. Remember that, 365 days a year. The number 116 123, and that number would be free from any phone, whatever you phone on, 116 123.
Yeah, and it was just amazing to hear from the professor when she described the country as facing a tidal wave of misery.
Yeah.
Awful.
Well, if you go through it or someone in your family goes through it, you don't need us to tell you, but thank you for sharing it with us this morning. 9:05.
Let's talk about the fires now. Look, the London Fire Brigade declared a major incident yesterday. A number of their fire officers also suffered in the conditions. Let's hear from the Assistant Commissioner, Jonathan Smith.
The sheer scale and challenge that we've faced over the last 12 hours in particular has been unprecedented in the history of London Fire Brigade. Since 8 o'clock yesterday morning, we've received 2,670 calls and attended well over 1,000 incidents, the vast majority of which were related to the heat wave that we've been experiencing. Again, as your colleague from Wennington was reporting, the fire in Wennington was not the only significant incident that we attended yesterday. We had 15 other serious and significant incidents spread right across the capital. That's on top of the usual day-to-day emergencies that we would normally respond to. And there was also a number of lower level types of incidents, mainly related to grassland fires and woodland fires, that had just resulted in the tinderbox dry conditions that existed yesterday. And our firefighters were operating in temperatures of 40 degrees, which is something we've not experienced before. And I would like to actually just put on record my immense thanks to firefighters, officers and control staff who coped and managed admirably yesterday in what was extremely challenging conditions. We had 16 firefighters who were suffering from heat-related injuries, 2 of whom were hospitalised, but I'm pleased to say have now been released from hospital. So that gives you a sense of the challenge that we faced yesterday and hence the reason we declared a major incident.
What we want to do now is we want to go to someone who lived through yesterday, saw what went on in Wennington. We say good morning to Francesca Lillystone. And Francesca is the editor for the Havering Daily. And we're speaking to her via phone. Francesca, thanks for your time this morning. What was it like yesterday?
Terrible, absolutely awful. None of us have ever known a day like it. As a resident, as a journalist, it's just horrendous. It just didn't stop. We didn't think the day would ever come to an end.
Then of how the day started, because, you know, everybody certainly in the capital here experiencing this extreme heat, really struggling to cope with it. At what point did you realise that this was something different, that you were facing an emergency?
Well, we woke up to news yesterday morning that there was a fire that had destroyed the roof of a block of flats. 60 people were displaced. They actually slept the night at Hornchurch Police Station. Officers there, police officers, were left with 60 people, had nowhere to go. So they put them up in a police station. So we were thinking, OK, this isn't good. And then by about 10 o'clock, I think a fire broke out in Upminster. And the fire officers there, firefighters, were saying this is probably the biggest we've had in Havering, that had around 30 fire engines and nearly 200 firefighters. And they just literally put that out. And I had a resident call me and saying, I can see smoke coming from Raynham and it looks really bad. And then obviously it just blew and it grew and spread out. Well, it went out of control, really. I mean, the firefighters obviously managed, they've got it under control. All credit to them. They've been incredible. And then we knew at that stage, and we were concerned for properties, we knew then that this was completely unprecedented. We'd never seen anything like this before.
I've seen it on the west coast of America. We have seen it in France. We have seen it in Portugal. But here we were seeing this within the M25. And what really brought it home to me was the row of ordinary houses. These weren't houses built in a forest or anything. It was because when the wind whipped up, the sparks carried, and that's the result we are looking at on our screen now. Those are real homes. Those are real people's lives affected by all of that. And I'm sure those people would never, ever have thought that a forest fire or a scrub fire would have led to that.
No, never. And as you're rightly saying, I think, residents are used to seeing images of Australia burning in the heat, of, Los Angeles. I believe California has got terrible forest fires and fires like that. And to have it on your own doorstep has been horrific for them. They, as you're saying, that they can't believe it. 18 homes a whole street was literally wiped out within minutes. Over 100 residents this morning are waking up to the fact that they have no home. They've lost everything. And then in neighbouring borough Dagenham, 10 o'clock last night, another 18 properties in a street have literally turned to ashes in dreadful circumstances. And our firefighters, our police officers have been working incredibly hard in incredible situations that are really unimaginable.
That's good. Look, thank goodness nobody lost their lives in this. Absolutely amazing that was the case. And as you say, a tribute to the emergency services for getting everybody out of there safely. But no consolation when it comes to losing every possession that you have at short notice, even pets, trying to identify where your cat might be or whatever it might be, getting wedding photographs.
Chaos.
Important documents.
Just chaos.
You've been speaking to some of those people who've lost everything, those people who've been evacuated as well. Raw emotions, I'm sure. What have they been saying to you?
They're heartbroken. I mean, I can say to you that people have lost everything. We've got a missing dog, Daisy, that people are desperately trying to find, a missing cat, Enzo, that people are trying to find. We've got firefighters have just rescued a tortoise that they've taken to the fire station. They're on the lookout now for as many pets that they can find, because obviously pets are scared, they run. We had scenes last night, I think around 10 o'clock, where firefighters and police officers had to gather the Dagenham community round in a community centre, and just horrific to call out the numbers of the properties that had been destroyed, that literally went down like a pile of ashes, and say to them, your house is gone. And these residents were saying to them, please, can I go back and get this? And the firefighters had to say to them, there's nothing left. There is literally nothing left. And these people have lost everything that they've owned.
Francesca, you paint a terrifying picture, and it's the first-hand account that I have heard on radio or television about all of this. But there you are. You're the editor of the Havering Daily. People in Wennington are going to think, why us? Why us? Why did this happen to us? Going ahead, do you think anything will change? I mean, will people be fearful of this happening again? Will the authorities have to look at what surrounds Wennington, which I presume, I'm not sure it's a parish, a village, how you would describe it, but it's certainly on the map now for all the wrong reasons. What do you think will happen going ahead?
I think the main thing we have to look at now is to make sure that we are prepared. Because they forecast these extreme heat temperatures that, they were saying we were going to hit 38, 39, possibly 40, and we did. And we obviously weren't prepared. We just weren't prepared. And this is, how can we be prepared? That's the question. And our emergency services need to be funded properly. I know we got to a stage yesterday where our firefighters literally were on their knees, were going from fire to fire, police officers that were standing there supporting them, doing an incredible job. And we need these services to be properly funded and not to face cut after cut as they have done. We need a fully funded London Fire Brigade. We need a fully funded Metropolitan Police Service. This highlights the incredible work that they are doing in our community and how important it is, so that residents, when they call for help, as they have been doing, know that the help will come, and not, oh look, we've run out of fire engines, as I believe has been the case in London. So, and also, the councils across London need to start planning, because climate change is there. And we need to acknowledge these things and acknowledge the fact that we are going to have summers like this that, that perhaps are common to Greece, but not here in the UK. So we need to be prepared.
Francesca, I just want to ask you, because, one thing that we can all be very proud of here in Britain is how we rally in a time of crisis, how the community pulls together. As you say, 18 people, or 18 homes being devastated in Wennington yesterday. What's going to happen to them? What's been the outpouring and reaction of neighbours and friends in that community? And do they need anything?
Well, people have been fantastic. People have been, I have to say, I put an appeal out last night on the Havering Daily for fluids for our firefighters that were tackling the blaze in Dagenham and for our police officers that have been there supporting them in this incredible heat. And within a matter of minutes, people had just rallied round. This was 10, 11 o'clock at night, had rallied round and bought them literally crates and crates. A GoFundMe has been set up by a local lady here, Natalie, to support the Wennington community. One has been set up in Dagenham. So I have to say that the Dagenham and Havering residents have been incredible. They've been outstanding. They have rallied round and are bringing toys and clothes for children. You've got 6 weeks holidays coming up soon. There's children that now have no home. They've lost their toys. They've lost everything. So the communities, the communities put the authorities to shame because they have done an incredible job in supporting their own.
Francesca, thank you so much. Thank you, and our hearts go out to everyone. And as Isabel said, who's going to step up to the mark? Who's going to help these people? Obviously, their friends, their community, hopefully all there for them. Thank you very much. We say goodbye. That was Francesca Lillystone, first-hand witness there to what went on in Wennington yesterday. She's the editor of the Havering Daily, and asking that question that I put to the fire service today, not that they can answer it. Are you properly funded? Have you got the resources that you want? Politicians, take note. That is real life. That is going to come back again. We're going to have to get used to these situations. We need a fire service. We need to appreciate the people who are members, recruiting the right people, having the equipment that they need, and that needs you guys to step up to the mark to fund it.
Yeah, look, speaking of politicians, let's go now to Annalise Dodds. She joins us to talk about those inflation figures that came out this morning. Good morning to you, Annalise Dodds, Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities and Chair of the Labour Party. You'll forgive us for coming to you a little bit late off that breaking news this morning. But just first of all, just in direct response to everything that's been happening with these fires in the last few hours, do you think that our emergency services, and particularly the fire service, is being properly funded? And the whole debate, I suppose, ties into this discussion about wages keeping in line with inflation.
Well, absolutely. And I have to say we have not been sufficiently prepared as a country, not because our firefighters or our emergency services haven't been doing their jobs properly. My goodness, the way that they have worked over the last 2 days has been genuinely incredible. As your interviewee just said, we really must be incredibly proud of their bravery and their service. But I'm afraid we have not stepped up to the plate nationally. We haven't seen the work on resilience that was necessary. Labour's been calling for this for a very long time. Under previous Labour governments, for example, we used to have really big national resilience exercises where we saw work across all of those emergency services with government involved. We've not seen that. We had actually a consultation on national resilience and our strategy on it. That ended 8 months ago and still no changes. Labour set out the changes that we need to make. We need to make sure, for example, that locally we do have the funding in the right places. We have services working together in those local resilience forums that actually Labour set up. We set up much of that architecture over 12 years ago, but there hasn't been any review really of them since to make sure that they're working effectively. So there's a lot that needs to change there. But I would say above all, the thing that needs to change is our government has got to accept, the Conservatives must accept, in a way that the Conservative leadership candidates have not accepted, that the climate crisis is here. We must take action against it. We shouldn't be running away from the need to achieve net zero, as some of those leadership candidates have been doing. And if we face up to that climate crisis, not only will we be doing the right thing for our planet and trying to prevent even more of these kind of incidents happening in the future, we will be creating those jobs that we really need within our country. You know, those jobs in onshore wind, for example. Labour's shown how we could double onshore wind, how we could end the delay on nuclear, insulate homes. We need to do all of that because the climate crisis is here right now, and Labour set out how we can get there.
Annalise Dodds, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for coming on to talk to us this morning, Chair of the Labour Party and Shadow Secretary of State as well. Thank you very much.
Well, we're now going to talk about a study from Cambridge University, which has been investigating junk food labels, right? So we're talking about cigarette-style health warnings on chocolate bars, on chips, on hamburgers, you know, the sort of thing. And if there was, would that actually deter you? Would that put you off?
I think it might make me think twice, yeah. It's like some people put pictures of themselves on the fridge when they don't like how they look to remind themselves, this is why I'm going to be good for the next few weeks. But does it take the joy out of life? Perhaps. Their findings proved, however, that the labels did actually put people off. So will we see these warnings coming into our food stores in the future? Who knows? Let's speak now.
We're going to have a debate. We're not going to speak. We're going to argue. We're going to argue about this now. Weight loss coach Steve Miller, he loves an argument. Where's Steve? Come on, Steve. Let's see Steve. There he is.
Morning.
Look at him. Look at him.
Listen. It's super to see you, and I have to say, you're looking rather slim.
Am I fading away?
You're looking great. You look really well.
You've had nothing to eat today, have you?
Listen, not as good as your co-presenter, of course, but you're looking great, mate. Yes, and I think I'm all for these warning signs.
That's because the last time I interviewed him, he called me, well, I can't tell you what he called me, but it's because he said I was obese. He said I was very, very fat. With him, restaurateur James Chiavarani.
Oh, well done, you.
Yes, he joins us now and says, it's a terrible idea that the best way to do all of this is what?
Well, I think you need to fix people's basic relationship with food to start with. I think generally, you know, browbeating people over the head with warning labels, I don't think is the best way.
Right. So you're a restaurateur.
I am.
So what sort of, you should say an Italian restaurateur. So that's pasta, which makes people fat.
Well, amongst other things, yes. Yes, but pasta is a staple.
Not fat. You're looking very slim. How do you do it working around all that food?
How do I do it? Well, just having a balanced diet and having a healthy exercise, you know, just making sure that you always, you know, that you balance everything out with your day, make sure that you run around 18 hours a day, you know, that certainly helps.
But Steve, you would say, James, Steve, sorry, that seeing a big, horrible picture as per cigarette packet or whatever should scare the bejesus out of you, yeah?
Well, first of all, some statistics, right? 64% of adults are either overweight or they're obese. UK forecast to be the fattest country in Europe by 2033. We then have estimated costs to the country of obesity of around 50 billion quid. We have got to do something. I believe that these warning signs are a good proactive step to move us forward, to get us to stop, look and listen when it comes to what we're putting in our mouths and what we are swallowing. I really do. And we have to remember that the research tells us this worked really well with cigarettes as well, in terms of helping people to kick the habit. It's not ideal.
This is really where I take issue on this.
To be honest.
Go on, James.
We've got to do something.
It's a lot easier to put warning labels on cigarettes than it is on junk food, for example. With cigarettes, you're dealing with a single product, tobacco, and we all know how harmful tobacco is. But what exactly are we trying to combat here with junk food? Is it the sugar? Is it the processed oils? Is it the aspartame? And then, you know, if it's the sugar, if we're going to put it on chocolate bars, are we also going to put it on cereal bars? Are we going to put it on ultra-processed carbohydrates? I mean, are we going to put it on bowls of pasta in people's restaurants? I mean, where does it stop?
I think we start with confectionery, and I think that would be great. I think we just keep it simple. We use common sense. We don't go into all the sort of granular detail of what's in food. If there is an item of food that is high in calorie and it's likely to make you fat, and let's remember, being too fat means you're probably, you know, potentially going to get cancer and die of heart attack and all of that sort of stuff. It gets people to think twice. We have hypnotized this nation to eat junk food. We need to re-hypnotize them to eat healthily. And this is a step in the right direction.
Can I
well
just
done,
Steve, where you're right is, and I've often said this, the food lobby must be so powerful. We are being poisoned by stuff that the NHS and whatever has to fix. And I do want to say from you, you speak from experience on all of this. I mean, you turned your life around. How did you do that?
Well, I did, but it's not all about me, but I will answer it. But everyone I work with over the last 20 years have found that a balance of being straight and direct with them, as well as giving them an arm around the shoulder when they need it, works best. In this country, what we've decided to do is mollycoddle people and, you know, be so worried about, are we fat-shaming people?
The problem is, though, is that...
I'm going to answer the question to Eamonn. I lost weight, Eamonn, using the 80-20 principle. 80% eating well, 20% a bit of what I fancy, and also using hypnosis, which is an incredibly powerful tool. And also to start nurturing me rather than just shoveling everything in my mouth.
Let James come in.
I was just going to say that, look, everybody knows that the Western diet is generally terrible for our health. But the best way to look at this is look at all the other countries outside of the Anglosphere where they have a better relationship with food and say, well, what are they doing correctly? Why don't we model their behaviour? Nobody else in continental Europe has to resort to putting these draconian measures
James,
on.
what do we do on a practical level then? You keep coming up with all the problems. And,
I'll tell you what we do.
You're not coming up with a practical solution. What is your solution?
The best thing for any consumer to do, I think, is to get off the industrial food chain as quick as possible. And the easiest way to do that is to...
What on earth does that mean? Get off the industrial food chain?
If you let me finish, then hang on. I'll let you finish, and you let me finish, please, just out of plain courtesy. For starters, stop shopping in supermarkets. Start treating your farmers with the amount of respect that they deserve. We have hard-working people up and down this country who are working their backs off to provide us with good, highly nutritious foods, which we're completely ignoring because everybody's running to the supermarket aisles instead. Start going back to your butcher, start going back to your fishmonger, finding your local fruit and veg supplier, speak to them, and it all forms into a healthy habit of having a better food chain, as opposed to just browbeating people with Mars bars.
You are telling the nation that the solution to lose weight is to stop shopping at a supermarket. I think everyone will be doubled up laughing, seriously.
Not in the slightest.
I tell you, I'm applauding him. I'm applauding him. Absolutely brilliant.
The supermarket is full of absolute rubbish, which is designed for nothing but efficiency and cost savings. That's what it's designed for.
My sandwich should be beautiful food, and I look at it, and a supermarket can make it taste just like salt.
It's absolute junk food.
Great, guys. Listen, thanks a million. But just final word, Steve, as about fat shaming, and make it short, make it brief for me, my friend. Listen, you and I, we used to think I was fat, right? I go out in the street and I look. Believe me, I am Slim Jim compared to most people, which is really frightening, really awful. And I don't think on television we ever really show the huge extent in ordinary life how this epidemic has spread. How bad is it? And if someone is grossly overweight, I mean, they do have mirrors at home, they know that. It's a complex problem. What would you say to them?
You're absolutely right. It's a complex problem. And being too fat means that we are putting ourselves at risk of certain cancers. We're putting ourselves at risk of heart disease. We're putting ourselves at risk of type 2 diabetes, etc. And when it comes to talking about the realities of being too fat, we have become too soft. We're not being honest with people because of the fear of being called a fat shamer. I say this, it's not fat shaming. It's life-saving. And that's why we've got to be more direct, and that's why these warnings must be implemented.
OK, Steve Millett, Director of Fatnosis, and James Chiavarini, restaurateur. Thank you both very much for sharing your views so forthrightly. And I suppose there's probably, my conclusion to all of that, probably a bit of truth in both of what they're saying, that too many of us are eating too much. We don't think about what we're putting in our mouth. We should support the high street in our local rather than just the supermarket. The answer is moderation in all things. That's my solution.
Moderation
Peace and love. And moderation.
I'm off to have a lettuce leaf. Not because it put me off my breakfast, but I do think, my friend, a lot of sense in what you said there.
Yeah,
I mean, as
Isabel, my greengrocer.
But as Isabel said, Steve has a truth there as well in so many ways. Guys, see you in the morning. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Early. Bye.
Wennington.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. Following yesterday's remarkable heat, well, it's much fresher for all of us today. There'll still be some sunny spells out there. It'll still be fairly warm, but there'll also be a few showers and thunderstorms to look out for. We've seen cold fronts move in during the last 24 hours. They've displaced the heat to the east. Still some hot weather in the east of England, but not on the scale that we saw yesterday. Early rain clearing the east of England, and then showers developing across Wales, the southwest, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will be on the cloudy side. But by the afternoon, as temperatures rise further, well, there is the risk of some slow-moving downpours or even some thunderstorms across parts of central and southern England into East Anglia and the southeast. And it's in East Anglia and the east of England where we're likely to see the highest temperatures, 29 or 30 Celsius, a more manageable 21 for Glasgow and Belfast, and low to mid-20s for much of Wales. So any showers or thunderstorms could be problematic for a time during the afternoon, early evening period, particularly on the roads, but they do ease away overnight. And then, well, for most, it's a dry night, clear spells in the west, a bit more cloud there in the east. Look at the temperatures, 15 to 16 Celsius in the south, 12 or 13 for Belfast and Glasgow. And so certainly much fresher overnight, more comfortable for sleeping for most of us, I think. And then we start off with a lot of cloud across the Midlands into eastern and northern England. Scotland also seeing some cloud and some showers in the far north. Northern Ireland, sunny spells, but the rest of the sunshine on Thursday will be across Wales and the southwest. 22 to 24 Celsius in the southwest, 26 for London, 20 for Glasgow and 17 for Belfast. So for most, those temperatures much closer to average and feeling